Chapter 526. Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan had hit the jackpot. The master and disciple duo had hurried on their journey as if they were on a scenic tour. They would fight spirit beasts if they could beat them. And they would hide if they couldn't beat them. It was the same when they met people. They would fight if they were confident. And they would hide if they weren't. The master and disciple duo were indifferent to everything. And the other was unscrupulous and lawless. And the other would fight and retreat in a carefree manner. And the other would rush and hide valiantly. They were a perfect match. Meng Chao Ran didn't care about anything in his heart. Despicable and shameless. Noble and serious. Everything would become indifferent in his hands. Meng Chao Ran would kill people who wanted to kill him in a carefree manner. And he would eliminate the source of trouble. This was the rule of Jianghu. So, everyone took it for granted. And Meng Chao Ran was no exception. But there was nothing that couldn't be done in Tan Tan's eyes. He could do anything. Even if he had to face a supreme-level expert with his current cultivation, as long as Meng Chao Ran said, "Fight," Tan Tan would bravely and fearlessly rush forward. And Meng Chao Ran's rich experience in Jianghu was completely different from other people's. He didn't need to see it. Meng Chao Ran would take Tan Tan to avoid it in advance. So, the master and disciple duo hadn't even scratched their skin when they reached the interior of the wasteland. Tan Tan had discovered more than once that Meng Chao Ran would suddenly stop and take a detour while they were hurrying on their journey. Tan Tan would only find out why his master had taken a detour after they had traveled a long distance. It was because there were either powerful spirit beasts or powerful enemies ahead. Sometimes, Tan Tan could clearly see that Meng Chao Ran's hair would stand on end when they were hurrying on their journey in a calm manner. And this proved that there was danger ahead. Tan Tan was envious of his master's ability. He was so envious that his eyes had turned red. This is too powerful. I won't encounter any danger with this kind of awareness. Meng Chao Ran could only force a smile when he saw his disciple's red eyes wanting to learn. God knows how many times he had been hunted down over the years because of certain things. He had fumbled around in life and death situations. And he had experienced many life and death crises to a certain extent. Therefore, he had developed such a keen sense. So, how could this be learned so easily? They had met two people were on the verge of death that day. Dressed in black, he rushed over from the top of the mountain as if he was struggling for his life. But when he was not far from the two of them, he fell down due to exhaustion and couldn't get up. At this time, Meng Chao Ran and his disciple were leisurely walking over. They had just turned a corner, and two people fell from the top of the mountain. The master and disciple looked at each other in dismay. Seeing that these two black-clothed men were motionless in the underbrush, Tan Tan wanted to go up and take a look. One of the black-clothed men groaned and said, "Save me." Tan Tan leaped forward. "So, you haven't died yet." "Wait." Meng Chao Ran stopped his disciple. Then, he said to Tan Tan's puzzled voice, "I remember that an expert said a long time ago that he was traveling in Jianghu. If he saw someone unconscious in front of him, it would be troublesome if it wasn't a trap. Under such circumstances, the best solution is to..." Tan Tan perked up his ears as he spoke till here. The two black-clothed men who couldn't move on the ground also involuntarily perked up their ears to listen. The best solution is to chop off the heads of these two men as soon as possible. Then, see if these two men are dead or not. Doing this can first put an end to any ambushes or traps. Second, you can establish a friendship with the people who are chasing them. You can also make a fortune from these dead men in the worst-case scenario. Meng Chao Ran insipidly said. Then, he pulled out his long sword with a clang sound. Tan Tan was dumbstruck. Master is very talented. Seeing if these two men are dead or not after chopping off their heads. This is simply a unique skill. It's definitely a secret manual. It's speaking from experience. Meng Chao Ran finished speaking. Then, a sword light flew out without the slightest hesitation. It cut off the heads of the two men who had opened their eyes wide in disbelief after listening to these words. Then, Meng Chao Ran put his sword back into its sheath and said, "There shouldn't be any danger now. You can go over and take a look." Tan Tan was somewhat dazed. He said oh, and walked over. I hadn't thought that my master would be so decisive. He's simply too cool. He killed 2 people for no reason. And, he even quoted the classics. Tan Tan felt that he must learn this extreme method of showing off. However, Tan Tan exclaimed in shock after a short while, "Fuck master, we're rich." Tan Tan was so excited that he started to speak. Meng Chao Ran flew into a rage and said, "Bullshit. Your master will pull out your tongue if you continue to speak such filthy word." Then, he asked, "What kind of wealth are you talking about? This inner core is very big." Tan Tan took out a jade box from one of the men's pockets. There was a fist-sized inner core in it. It was sparkling and translucent. It was shining dazzlingly. The inner core of a spirit beast. Meng Chao Ran turned pale with fright. Meng Chao Ran saw the multicolored rays of light and the rich world's vital energy. He knew that they had struck it rich this time. Our luck is very good. Tan Tan was reluctant to part with it. He opened his mouth and chuckled. "Let's go quickly." "Luck my ass." The corner of Meng Chao Ran's mouth fiercely twitched. It seemed as if he had sensed that a big trouble was coming head-on. He pulled his disciple, and dragged Tan Tan and his master to fly away like an arrow. Tan Tan was reluctant to part with them. He repeatedly turned his head and said, "Master, we haven't found anything on that man's body yet. Perhaps, there's still the inner core of a spirit beast. Do you think that the inner core of a spirit beast is a cabbage? Our lives will be lost if we continue to search." Meng Chao Ran angrily said, "These 2 men have the inner core of a spirit beast. But, they are still being hunted down like this. It's clear that there's an expert among them. Moreover, their wounds are very fresh. So, the people who are chasing them will come here soon. What are we waiting for?" The master and his disciple had only walked for a few kilometers. But, Meng Chao Ran had already left a dozen or so traces behind them to confuse the people. Then, they determined the direction. Then, they hurried on with all their might, and walked towards a deserted place. They had barely walked for a few breaths when a group of black-clothed men arrived here. They rummaged through the corpses of the 2 men. Their complexions suddenly changed. "We've been taken advantage of. The inner cores are gone. And, the sword marks on their necks are still visible. Blood is still flowing out. These 2 men couldn't have run far. Quickly chase after them." Another man gnashed his teeth. "Who's the one who dared to take advantage of our Black Devil clan? We'll cut them into pieces after we catch them. I'm going to die from anger." Suddenly, the black-clothed men flew out. They were burning with anxiety as they chased after them with all their might. "Fuck. We've spent so much effort. And, we've finally succeeded with great difficulty. But, we've been robbed at the last moment. This is simply too sullen. Moreover, this kind of thing has happened to the Black Devil clan. They're famous for being vicious. So, it's even more shameful and humiliating. We've fought with our lives on the line. But, someone else has become the fisherman. Moreover, we don't even know who this fisherman is. This is unbearable. The heavens are my witnesses. This is a coincidence. That inner core of a spirit beast belongs to that extremely unlucky single-horned dragon. Bu Liu Qing had extracted half of its blood essence that day. Then, he had thrown this extremely weak beast away. And, it had landed somewhere unknown. How terrifying was the strength of a supreme martial artist's throw? The single-horned dragon had been dizzy when it had landed on the ground. So, it hadn't been able to move for a long time. Moreover, it had just lost half of its blood essence. So, it hadn't been able to fight. However, the most unlucky thing was that, it had fallen behind a big mountain. And, there were more than a dozen experts of a clan of the third heavens waiting to take advantage of it. The single-horned dragon had fallen into the center of their ambush when it had landed. Moreover, it had smashed one of them to death on the spot. What was even more tragic was that, it couldn't move after it had fallen. It couldn't do anything except blinking its eyes and shedding tears. "I only need half an hour to recover a little. I only need half an hour." The single-horned dragon shouted wildly in its heart. But, who would give it half an hour? They wouldn't even give it half a breath. This clan had dispatched the most powerful people to try their luck. They only had 2 king-level experts and more than a dozen revered martial artists. Perhaps, they would have been swallowed in the blink of an eye if they had participated in the contest. Therefore, they didn't dare to go in. Who would have thought that a windfall would fall from the sky? A half-dead spirit beast would fall from the sky while they were basking in the sun? Is there such a good thing in this world? More than a dozen experts of this clan were shocked by this sudden surprise in an instant. This is a fucking poem. Raise your head when you're hungry, and dragon meat falls from the sky. So, how could they be polite when such a good thing happened? Therefore, everyone swarmed forward. They peeled off its skin, pulled out its tendons, collected its blood essence, and took out its inner core. Of course, these people didn't know that the blood essence of this spirit beast was incomplete. So, it was useless. They were so happy that they couldn't close their mouths. Wow. I only wanted to get a few drops. Who would have thought that I would get a whole beast? This formidable spirit beast didn't die in the hands of a supreme level expert. But, it died in the hands of a group of ants. This is the will of heaven. This kind of death was too humiliating for a powerful spirit beast to die like this. The rest of this spirit beast's body had become spoils of war after they had toiled for a while, except for its broken flesh. However, these experts had become dizzy with joy when they realized that there wasn't any danger. So, they had done something that could be said to be digging their own graves. These guys had a greedy look in their eyes. They begged the 2 elders to roast the meat of this spirit beast and eat it. This is a spirit beast. Where would I get to eat the meat of a spirit beast in my life? I won't die in vain if I get to eat it this time. The 2 elders were in a very good mood. They were so happy that they couldn't close their mouths. So, they waved their hands and agreed without thinking. Therefore, everyone gathered firewood and started to roast the dragon meat. They were very busy. Everyone was full of energy. They were eating the dragon meat while looking forward to the clan's rise in the 3 heavens after they had obtained so many good things. However, the cruel fact proved that the saying extreme joy begets sorrow was extremely reasonable at this time. How could there be no smoke when the fire rose from the roast dragon meat? The Black Devil clan had been running around without any harvest. They were the first to discover the thick smoke. Chapter 527. The people of the Black Devil clan were hiding in the periphery because the Black Devil clan was ready to plunder the fruits of victory from any other clan. This was the tradition of the Black Devil clan. They would charge and break through enemy lines. As for the fruits of victory, they would snatch it from their hands if they got it. They obviously couldn't eat cooked food since it was an ambush. Otherwise, those wily old foxes from those big clans would leave if they didn't escape from here. Therefore, they could only gnaw on dry food. Motherfucker. These people of the Black Devil clan are usually gnawing on dry food in this northern wilderness. But, they found thick smoke not far away today. Fuck. Someone is barbecuing meat. Therefore, they followed the smoke to find this place. They wanted to beat this person up. And, they wanted to drive away this guy who dared to barbecue meat here. You barbecued meat here. Aren't you cutting off our Black Devil clan's source of income? Moreover, this place is clearly a peripheral area. What big clan can there be here? Big clans generally go inside. Who would dare to not give face to the Black Devil clan? Therefore, the people of the Black Devil clan felt relieved and relaxed. However, they saw the corpse of the single-horned dragon when they arrived here. Blood was still flowing out of it. ***. More than a dozen king-level experts of the Black Devil clan were stunned. This is a godsend gift from the heavens. Such a precious thing has been obtained by such a small clan. Doesn't this mean that this is a godsend to our Black Devil clan? Otherwise, how can there be such a coincidence? The people of the Black Devil clan rubbed their fists and jumped down confidently. Therefore, the people of this small clan who were happily eating the dragon meat were out of luck. After a fierce battle, these people who had just eaten the dragon meat died. This proved that the dragon meat couldn't be eaten casually. It was only a single-horned dragon. But, it had the word dragon in its name. The blood essence, dragon tendons, dragon bones, dragon skin, and so on were all snatched away. Only the two king-level experts had managed to break out of the encirclement with the core. They had burned their own life force to escape with scars all over their bodies. The people of the Black Devil clan had chased after them. The two king-level experts had exhausted their life force and had fled thousands of miles away. They had then finally met Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan at the end of their lives. It could be said that they wouldn't have been so coincidental if they hadn't used a little bit of their strength. As a result, young Master Tan didn't have to expend any effort, and picked up a spirit beast's core for free. This was equivalent to a windfall from the heavens. With the windfall in his pocket, of course he had to run. With Meng Chao Ran's extraordinary senses, the master and disciple duo had been running for their lives for 3 days without being caught. There were a few times when they were intercepted, but the two of them took advantage of the fact that their opponents were few in number and did not surround them to escape. The experts of the Hei Mo clan were furious. He immediately released the news, and all the small teams of the Black Devil clan that were preparing to launch a surprise attack were to gather together and chase after them. There are actually 2 Emperor-level experts here, thus, Meng Chao Ran's escape route became much more difficult. But, at this critical moment, another accident happened. This accident happened so suddenly that even Meng Chao Ran, who had a strong mental fortitude, was flabbergasted. He didn't know what was going on. The accident happened to Tan Tan. After young Master Tan obtained the core of a spirit beast, he felt as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. Occasionally, he would take it out to take a look and admire it. Finally, at noon that day, when young Master Tan took it out to have a look, he tried to bite it. Tan Tan dared to swear to the heavens that he hadn't used any strength. He really only wanted to try it. He really only wanted to study it, that's all. Everyone knew that Tan Tan had a very strong desire for research. In fact, Meng Chao Ran had been beside him at that time. But, he had only smiled and shook his head. He had tacitly approved of his disciple's mischievousness. Tan Tan wouldn't be Tan Tan if he wasn't mischievous. However, he hadn't even bitten it, when that core of a spirit beast suddenly rushed into Tan Tan's mouth with all its might, as if it had a life of its own. A fist-sized core, Tan Tan let out a strange cry. He rolled his eyes and stared blankly. His hands were empty. That fist-sized core of a spirit beast was stuck in his throat, and it was tightly blocked. This stuck feeling was very uncomfortable. Tan Tan opened his mouth and became dumbstruck. Meng Chao Ran turned pale with fright. He hastily took it out, but he couldn't take it out no matter what he said. Later, Meng Chao Ran became anxious. He saw that his disciple was about to suffocate to death. So, he simply took out his long sword to pry it out. The core was stuck in Tan Tan's throat. It seemed as if it was desperately falling down. It was desperately drilling into his throat, and Meng Chao Ran's prying had an effect when young Master Tan was about to suffocate to death. This inner core fiercely drilled into Tan Tan's throat with the help of an external force, and forcibly widened Tan Tan's throat by a fold. Then, it slowly and leisurely entered Tan Tan's stomach. Meng Chao Ran's eyebrows twitched as he saw this. His hair stood on end, and he nearly fainted. This scene was like a finger-thick snake swallowing an egg alive. Tan Tan's neck fiercely bulged, and then, it fell down. Both the master and disciple felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Meng Chao Ran's face was grief-stricken, the core of a spirit beast. Even an emperor-level expert would explode if he were to eat it raw, right? My disciple, my pitiful disciple. Then, Tan Tan became anxious. He vomited, but couldn't spit it out. So, he simply took off his pants, and made a hook with a tree branch. Then, he pulled it out from the bottom. His stomach was in extreme pain as he pulled it out. But, the core didn't come out. It seemed as if it had settled down in his stomach. Meng Chao Ran mixed a laxative, and gave it to Tan Tan. But, Tan Tan didn't have any reaction. Then, he increased the dosage to 10 times the amount of laxative, and even a horned dragon in its prime would have diarrhea if it were to eat it. Finally, there was a reaction this time. Tan Tan ate 10 times the amount of laxative. Then, he let out more than 10 stinky farts, but there was no reaction afterwards. It seemed as if this 10 times the amount of laxative was only used to induce farts. Meng Chao Ran was at his wit's end. He sighed helplessly. Fuck. I have accepted 2 disciples. Chu Yang is already a heaven-defying existence. But I didn't expect that this little disciple would also have a monstrous physique. Even a monstrous genius would have diarrhea if he were to eat that laxative, right? Fortunately, the terrifying phenomenon of Tan Tan exploding didn't happen. Meng Chao Ran felt relieved after 2 days. But Tan Tan's body began to have a fever. Moreover, this fever was different from an ordinary fever. His body temperature was getting higher and higher. Tan Tan's spirit was getting 100-fold higher. Tan Tan was getting more and more lively. Tan Tan didn't even need to sleep. Tan Tan's body temperature had reached a terrifying level. Meng Chao Ran would have been scalded if he had placed his hand on Tan Tan's forehead without circulating his martial power. But Tan Tan was feverish as if nothing had happened. He had never heard that eating the inner core of a spirit beast could cause such a reaction. Meng Chao Ran was experienced and knowledgeable. But he had never heard of such a thing. Tan Tan's spiritual power hadn't increased after eating the inner core of a spirit beast. Instead, his body was getting hotter and hotter. His spirit was getting more and more vigorous. In fact, it seemed as if he could swallow a mountain alive. But it wasn't a good thing to continue burning like this. Both Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan understood this. Therefore, Meng Chao Ran took Tan Tan out of their hiding place and went towards the layer of mysterious ice. Only the layer of mysterious ice that hadn't melted for 10,000 years could dissolve Tan Tan's body temperature, right? This was Meng Chao Ran's only hope. He had ended up being hunted down after he had come out. Meng Chao Ran had gone all the way for his disciple. And he had exposed the direction he was heading in. Tan Tan had been excited for the first few days. But he had now become distressed. Master, what should I do? My body is so hot. Tan Tan lay down on the ground, and the ice that hadn't melted for many years turned into a pool. It was steaming like a hot spring. Tan Tan jumped out of the pool with a splashing sound. Then, a burst of steam came out of his body, and his clothes dried. Tan Tan wanted to cry, but had no tears. I don't need to wash my clothes. I just need to dry them in the sun. I just need to stick them on my body. Moreover, I don't need to waste my spiritual power. It's fine if you can't find it, and if there's no abnormality, it's fine if you continue to be so hot. Meng Chao Ran could only comfort his disciple like this. It's fine. It's just a high body temperature. You'll get used to it after a long time. I can get used to it, but the problem is that others can't. Tan Tan said with a sad face, what will I do if I marry that little girl Xie Dan Feng in the bridal chamber in the future? She'll be cooked as soon as I press down on her body. Then, I'll be able to eat meat without doing anything. Master, boo-hoo, I'm not looking for a wife to eat human flesh. You have to prove this to me. Get lost. Meng Chao Ran couldn't bear it any longer. He kicked his disciple several 100 feet away, and got embedded in the mountain wall. He gnashed his teeth, and cursed in a low voice, you want me to prove it to you? I'll prove it to you. Tan Tan slid down the mountain wall with his arms and legs spread out. Then, he nimbly flipped over, and happily ran over shamelessly. Master, I've thought of a way. What's the way? Meng Chao Ran curiously asked. I'll make an ice crystal armor for her if she's still so hot in the bridal chamber. Then, I'll cover her whole body, and leave only a hole below. Tan Tan earnestly said. Meng Chao Ran looked up to the sky, and heaved a long sigh. He looked at the mountain wall, and had an impulse to knock his head against it. Ah, this won't do. She'll be cooked somewhere else. Tan Tan sighed in despair. Then, he discovered the loophole in his plan. He couldn't help but get angry. He felt so wronged that he wanted to vomit blood. He pointed to the sky, and cursed, this is the work of a thief. Isn't the heavens deliberately playing with me? I look like this. Do you think it's easy to find a wife? Great young Master Tan was angry. Meng Chao Ran was also angry. He grabbed his disciple's lapel, and cursed for the first time in his life, will you die if you don't speak a word? Can't you shut your mouth? Do you want to kill me? Tan Tan was startled. Master, you're cursing me, boo-hoo. Master, you're cursing me, boo-hoo. Tan Tan covered his face and wept. Meng Chao Ran squatted down in grief and held his head. Chapter 528. Meng Chao Ran was in so much pain. Being together with Tan Tan, even a saint would be turned into a villain. In the past, when the two of them were constantly separated, it was much better than now. Damn! What kind of sin did I commit to have such a disciple? Meng Chao Ran, who had always been gentle and indifferent, was now filled with anger because of his own brother. Moreover, it was nowhere to be seen. The mysterious ice layer is in front. Meng Chao Ran said weakly, if this place is useless, I can't do anything. You can continue to heat up. Then, he suddenly straightened his face. Pay attention, the people who are chasing us have not made any movements these days. They must know that we are coming here. There must be an ambush ahead. You better focus. Meng Chao Ran asked in a daze. Bastard. Do you have a pig's brain? Meng Chao Ran was furious. It's not like they haven't seen you steaming all the way here. Where else can you get rid of this heat other than the mysterious ice layer? Will you only be satisfied if you die from your stupidity? Chu Yang had already heard Tan Tan's voice from afar. He immediately knew that these people from the Heimo clan wanted to deal with his master and junior martial brother. I haven't settled the score with you for Mo Ching Wu, and now you want to deal with my master and junior martial brother? Chu Yang was infuriated. Looking at the position of the ambush, Chu Yang secretly counted. Just this side alone, there should be close to 20 people. With the strength of these people, the three of them had no hope of winning. In fact, if they were besieged, even the hope of escaping would be very slim. After all, none of the people sent by the Heimo clan were weak. This was a big matter related to the future of the Heimo clan in the next few decades. How could they be careless? Therefore, Chu Yang felt that he could not act blindly without thinking. If he acted rashly, the three of them would be buried here. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and immediately dived into the mysterious ice layer. He had appeared and disappeared without a sound. Behind Black Devil and the others, no one had noticed him. Everyone's attention was focused on the two people who were about to arrive. The inner core of a spirit beast. It was on these two people. All the experts of the Heimo clan were enraged during this pursuit. They were on the verge of collapse. They are just two small king-level experts. The Heimo clan had already given them face by sending out 5 people. However, these two little loaches were cunning and extremely vigilant. It was simply outrageous. Countless encirclements and interceptions, countless inescapable encirclements, they had actually managed to escape and evade them all. It was as if he could predict the future. Later, the Heimo clan dispatched 40 experts, but they still couldn't do anything to them. This was simply inconceivable. Fortunately, a phenomenon occurred later on, which made everyone calm down. One of these two people should have a high fever or been poisoned by fire poison. Wherever he passed, there would be water stains. And these two people were heading towards the layer of profound ice. Well, they probably wanted to use the profound ice to dissolve it. Therefore, the people of the Heimo clan simply came here to ambush. Biding one's time for exhaustion was the way to go. However, why would they be poisoned by fire poison in this extremely cold weather of the northern wilderness? Everyone couldn't figure it out. Everyone of the Heimo clan was gnashing their teeth in anger. I will. I will. I will. I will. I will. I will. I will kill them. I will let them die too easily. It will be a waste of my tiredness and suffocation for the past few days. The eyes of the Heimo clan's expert who was lying at the back were wide open. He looked at the two figures that were slowly moving towards them from afar. His fingers had almost dug into the profound ice beneath his body. You guys should hurry up. You are making me anxious. Everyone was anxious. But no one dared to act blindly without thinking. They had been at this distance several times. But those two people would immediately run away as soon as someone moved. They couldn't catch up with them. It's better to be safe. Get closer, get closer. This king-level expert of the Heimo clan was anxiously waiting. His body was like a drawn bow. Then, he felt something strange below his body. But he didn't pay attention to it. This was a layer of profound ice that hadn't melted since ancient times. Something strange? What can be strange? Don't tell me that someone can drill down to the bottom. He even laughed at his own thoughts. But then, under the layer of profound ice, a transparent thing was slowly rising. Then, below his neck, the tip of a sword appeared without a sound. At this time, he was trying his best to raise his head and look forward. His posture was very good. He was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Even the skin around his throat was very tight. Puff! The tip of the sword stabbed out like lightning, piercing into his throat. Following that, a ferocious sword chi surged into his body, taking control of his brain and destroying it. Then, it took control of his meridians and exploded his dantian. This king-level expert only had enough time to bulge his eyes out. He didn't have time to make any other reaction. His body was still in its original position. But, it had changed from tight to soft lying on the ground. A pool of blood silently gushed out from the wound on his throat. It dyed the profound ice beneath his body red. Then, it was frozen. I used too much strength. So much blood has flowed out. If someone notices the smell of blood, it will be troublesome. Chu Yang sighed under the layer of profound ice with some annoyance. He couldn't control his strength in his first attack. He relied on the sharpness of the calamity sword and the power of the sword spirit to quickly sneak in here from the place where he mined the cold ice spirit fruit. Then, he took the opportunity to kill with one strike. However, his entire body was frozen to the point that it was about to freeze. This kind of movement required the full help of the sword spirit and the calamity sword. They wouldn't help him resist the cold. And his 7U cold chi was inside the calamity sword. It was completely relying on the spiritual energy in his body to resist the cold. This was 10,000-year profound ice. Without time to think, Chu Yang immediately controlled the calamity sword to sneak towards the place where the other person was hiding. He hurriedly took out a piece of profound yang heart from the calamity space and covered his mouth. Only then did he feel a little better. Puff! Another faint and inaudible sound was heard. Then, a tiny bloodstain appeared on the throat of another king-level expert of the Black Devil clan who was 30 feet away. Then, that king-level expert silently lowered his head and died. The experts of the Heimo clan probably didn't expect that there was someone under the 10,000-year profound ice. Moreover, that person was moving and attacking them. All of their attention was on the two people who were approaching from afar. On the other side, Master, don't worry. If there is an enemy, I will hold him. The voice was getting closer and closer. A male duck's voice said happily, I will burn him to death. Chao Dao's powerless response. On the other side, puff. Another one. Chu Yang's eyes were cold. His body was like lightning as he moved again. On the other side, I don't know where Chu Yang went. It's really strange. Maybe he saw me and I will be happy and not burn him. It was still that male duck's voice. Chao Dao rolled his eyes. On the other side, puff. Another one. Chu Yang moved again. Although he was under the profound ice, his blood was burning. Killing intent was dense. The pleasure of a successful sneak attack filled his nerves. On the other side, my poor little Dan Feng Ah. I haven't seen her for a long time. When I see her, I will definitely kiss her fiercely. I'm just afraid I'll burn her lips. That strange voice came closer. Meng Chao Dao didn't say anything. On the other side, puff, puff. 2 in a row. Sigh, thinking about it, it's really a tragedy. If little Danfeng went back on her word because of my fever, then I would become the #1 person in the world who became a bachelor because of my fever. Although this #1 in the world is also an honor. That voice chattered on. On the other side, puff. On the other side. I am a little regretful. Master, I really should have followed Chu Yang to become the Prime Minister of Ironcloud Nation. At the very least, I can become a great general. Sigh, now that I am burned like this. I am really unlucky. Meng Chao Dao's face turned pale. On the other side, puff, puff. On one side, there was a lot of nonsense. His imagination was running wild. He chattered endlessly, making people who heard him have the urge to commit suicide. On the other side, there was a person who killed people like cutting grass. He killed people one after another without any hesitation. One by one, the sovereign-level experts died in silence. They could not bear the injustice. Without anyone noticing, this silent layer of ice had already turned into a grave. In a very short time, Chu Yang had already killed 10 people in a row. This was already the limit of what he could do. But with the number of enemies, this was far from enough. It couldn't eliminate the threat at all. But his good luck ended here because he didn't have time. However, Meng Chao Ran seemed to have discovered something when he was about to attack again. So, he pulled Tan Tan to a stop. Following which, a smug laugh rang out from the ground, as a sinister voice spoke out, "The two of you, it's really hard to wait for you guys. But, you have finally set foot on the road to hell." Following this deep voice, the people of the Black Devil clan stood up from the ground. Yes, those who were still alive stood up. But, there were 10 people who would never be able to stand up again. Chu Yang quietly drilled out, and hid behind a big rock. He looked at the situation in front of him with a tense and serious face. His eyes vigilantly looked around, and looked for a favorable terrain. He had only killed 10 people. There were 20 on this side. Half of them were still alive. And 10 people had appeared on the other 2 sides at the same time. The most serious thing was that the auras of 2 of them were very strong. They were clearly Emperor-level experts. The people on the 3 sides had formed a pocket. And Meng Chao Dao and Tan Tan were at the entrance of this pocket. At this distance, it was too late to escape. If they turned around, their backs would be exposed to the enemy. The situation was very serious. It had reached an extremely bad point. Chapter 529. Meng Chao Ran had an indifferent look on his face. But, he felt a little regretful in his heart. My state of mind has been disturbed by Tan Tan. I have fallen into a state of speechlessness. This has led to a substantial decrease in my sensitivity to danger. I didn't notice it earlier. I hadn't completely fallen into the enemy's encirclement. But, it was already too late. Meng Chao Ran had recovered his indifferent state of mind in the face of enemies who were dozens of times stronger than him. He gently smiled and said, "Even if I don't walk on the road to hell today, I'll have to walk on it in the future. However, I've made everyone wait in this world of ice and snow for such a long time. This Meng Chao Ran's heart has suffered a lot. I'm sorry." His voice was natural, and his tone was brisk. It was as if he was talking to an old friend. The people of the Black Devil clan felt as if they were bathing in a spring breeze at this moment. Everyone's heart shivered for a moment. This man is facing certain death. But, he's so calm. There are only 3 possibilities for someone to be calm in the face of such a terrible situation. First, he has complete strength. So, he can escape. Second, he has transcended life and death. Third, this man is crazy. But, this man doesn't have that kind of strength. Moreover, he behaves appropriately. He isn't crazy. That is, he has transcended life and death. He has transcended life and death. Life and death are just a form of life for him. So, they don't matter. Such a person isn't scary because he doesn't have strength. But, he's respectable. Admirable. The 30 experts of the Black Devil clan didn't feel the pleasure of finally catching someone in the face of Meng Chao Ran when they saw his indolent and warm face. He wasn't the only one. Even his unscrupulous disciple was looking at them with a sidelong glance. It seemed as if he didn't put these 28 king-level experts and 2 emperor-level experts in his eyes. His gaze was like that of a hunting eagle looking at a group of rabbit. "Your Excellency, hand over the inner cores of spirit beasts." The emperor-level expert of the Black Devil clan revealed a trace of admiration in his eyes. He said, "You won't be able to avoid death. But, I can promise you that I'll give you a quick and painless death because of your indifference." Meng Chao Ran shook his head and laughed. He slowly pulled out his long sword, and softly said, "You wish to fight. In the end, it's just death, so why bother talking about whether it's satisfying or not?" He looked at the shiny sword body and sighed, "But, that inner core of a spirit beast is something that I can never give." "Why?" The emperor expert of the Black Devil clan got angry, and asked in a somewhat surprised manner. He sensed a special meaning from the other party's words. It was as if the other party had some difficulties and was unable to hand over the core. What I'm trying to say is that no matter what, you won't be able to obtain the cores of spirit beasts. Meng Chao Ran smiled and said calmly, only a good head is here. Who will take it? The pupils of the Emperor expert of the Heimo clan contracted. He looked at Meng Chao Ran, and a trace of murderous intention pervaded out of his body. He waved his hand, and shouted, die. Right at this moment, a sudden cry of surprise rang out. Ah! Pei Tilda, the leader of this team, was a middle-grade king-level expert. He turned his head, and was about to issue an order to attack. But, he suddenly discovered that 10 people were missing from his side. Where is he? Where did Wang Erhei, Zhao Sanyu, Sun Wudan, and the others go? With this shout, the Heimo's formation became somewhat disorganized. He called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, a few people leaped back. Then, several screams rang out in succession, Emperor expert. These people, are all dead. Then, a few people came out trembling, dead, they are really dead. Someone killed them from underground. Bullshit. The Emperor expert of the Heimo clan flew into a rage. He slapped that person's face, and berated, this is 10,000-year mysterious ice. Do you understand 10,000-year mysterious ice? That king-level expert's body was slapped, and he spun around. He felt dizzy, and cried, it's true. Emperor expert. The Emperor expert of the Heimo clan's vision condensed. His long body swept over, and examined the 10 frozen corpses. His complexion became more and more unsightly. Then, he suddenly stood up and roared, which scoundrel has secretly plotted against us? Come out and fight me fairly if you have the guts. There was silence all around. Heavy snow was fluttering down. But, there was no response. He cursed as he carefully examined the mysterious ice in front of him and behind him. He couldn't believe that someone had hidden underground to assassinate him. This is mysterious ice. How did they hide inside? Everyone, pay attention to your feet. There is a mysterious enemy. The complexion of the Emperor expert of the Heimo clan became cautious. The most important thing for him at the moment was this mysterious enemy who was hiding in the dark. Meng Chao Ran and Chu Yang were already encircled. So, they couldn't escape. However, this mysterious underground assassin could take people's lives as soon as he appeared. He was an Emperor expert. But, he couldn't dare to say that he could preserve his life under such a strange assassination. The palms of the Emperor expert of the He Tang clan became sweaty as he looked at the 10 corpses. This person is a cold-blooded assassin. Moreover, he's an extremely experienced cold-blooded assassin. He has killed 10 people, and no one on my side has discovered it. Such an assassination method is unheard of. Everyone looked at their feet as if they were facing a formidable enemy when they heard the warning. They were afraid that a sword would drill out from under their feet if they weren't careful. However, Chu Yang wasn't under the layer of ice at the moment. He had quietly come out. And, he was quietly moving in the direction that he had chosen. He would be able to deal the greatest damage as long as he reached there. He would tear open an opening and escape with his master and junior martial brother. Chu Yang had already memorized the surrounding terrain by heart. The people of the Heimo clan were vigilant for a long time. But, they didn't find anything. Tan Tan couldn't help but laugh. Master, look at these people. They are staring at the ground. They look like a group of dung beetles looking for dung. Meng Chao Ran solemnly said, don't talk nonsense. He paused and said, child, when will you change this bad habit of yours? Why do you always like to tell the truth? He continued to teach, Tan Tan, you must remember that the truth can hurt people. You can't tell the truth in this Jianghu. We all look like dung beetles when we tell lies. But, you must never tell them. Do you understand? How angry would those dung beetles be if you tell them? Put yourself in their shoes. Would you be angry if someone said that you look like a dung beetle? Meng Chao Ran knew that he and his disciple had no hope of escaping in the face of such an army. Therefore, he simply let go of himself, and ruthlessly ridiculed the enemies in front of him. Master, you're right. Tan Tan submissively said, Master, I won't dare to do that in the future. I will only tell lies in the future. 30 people shot 10 vicious gazes at him at the same time. Look, the dung beetles are angry, right? Meng Chao Ran glared at his disciple. It's no wonder. There's obviously no dung here. They can't find it. So, they'll naturally be angry, Tan Tan said in a very understanding manner. Then, he looked at the king-level experts and smiled foolishly. He said, what do you say, right? Take down these 2 people first. Another emperor-level expert of the Black Tower was so angry that his complexion turned purple. He roared, I will personally pull out the tongue of this talkative bastard. Kill. More than 20 people rushed forward at the same time. Come on. Meng Chao Ran's eyes flashed with a look of relief. He gently smiled. Then, he pulled out his sword, and launched the fleeting snow cloud movement technique at full speed. He turned into a crisscrossing sword light along with his sword. Tan Tan wildly shouted. He suddenly pulled out his long sword, and rushed out behind Meng Chao Ran. Suddenly, a strange change occurred at this moment. A swift and fierce sword light suddenly fell down like a thunderbolt from the heavens. It came from an oblique direction. It was like a meteor dragging a long tail of light. And, it fiercely came from a commanding position. There was no sign of this sword light. So much so that everyone caught a glimpse of it from the corner of their eyes. However, they still felt a kind of frightening dreamlike feeling. The master of Calamity Sword, Air Chu Yang, had used all of his strength to launch this fierce and unparalleled move. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? He attacked with all his strength. He didn't hold anything back. He launched it without making any sound. The king-level expert in the front only had enough time to scream. Chu Yang had already passed through his body. Even this king-level expert couldn't block this sword light. The sword light slashed 3 people in succession. It had already rushed into the encirclement. Then, he coldly shouted, "Follow me." He didn't stop at all. He crossed the distance of 70 feet, and arrived in front of another king-level expert. This king-level expert was scared out of his wits. He didn't have enough time to dodge. So, he could only pull out his sword to meet the attack. However, the sword of this king-level expert of the Black Devil clan turned into iron scraps as soon as his 2 swords came in contact with each other. Then, his entire body was torn apart. Chu Yang had already rushed in front of the next person. Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan quickly reacted. They followed behind this stunning swordlight, and rushed out with all their strength. Chu Yang hadn't chosen the best time to launch this move. However, the location was the best. That was because the 2 Emperor-level experts of the Black Devil clan were on the left and right. Chu Yang had launched this move at the moment when they could see each other. However, they would have been blocked by their subordinates' bodies if they had attacked immediately. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? The swiftness and fierceness of this move was unparalleled in both ancient and modern times. The lingering charm of this move was released when Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan rushed out after the swordlight. The swordlight swept across the vast sky, and issued a burst of crackling sound. A sound that was almost like a muffled thunder came out. The might of this swordlight was so terrifying. The swordlight had been launched from the rear of the encirclement. The first person he had killed had his back facing him. The second person had already turned his body sideways. The third person had already turned his face. The fourth person had already faced him from the front. And, the fifth person, had turned his body sideways. There was no place. No place. The swordlight flashed like a thunderbolt, and rushed out of the encirclement. It still carried the lingering power of the swordlight, and flew forward like lightning. Chapter 530. However, the experts of the Black Devil clan were still looking at the flickering shadow of this world-shaking sword. No one had seen what kind of person was wrapped in this swordlight from beginning to end. There was complete silence. Even the 2 Emperor-level experts had fallen into a state of stupefaction after they had witnessed the terrifying might of the sword. It was as if they were in a nightmare. Then, they came back to their senses, and saw that Tan Tan had just run out of the encirclement. The nearest king-level expert reacted the fastest. He almost subconsciously struck out with his palm. It slapped Tan Tan's back with a bang. Suddenly, a strange cry was heard. Then, a burst of green smoke rose. Tan Tan had been hit by this king-level expert, and had somersaulted twice. Then, he got up as if nothing had happened, and started to run wildly. Then, they looked at this king-level expert, who was looking at his own hand in disbelief. Everyone looked at his hand, and saw that it was steaming hot. The smell of barbecued meat was coming from his hand. Moreover, a layer of blisters had appeared on his palm. Everyone was aghast. A concentrated palm strike has blisters on his palm? This is the hand of a king-level expert. Is this bastard carrying a volcano on his back? Is it possible that magma is flowing in his body instead of blood? The two emperor-level experts took the lead, and chased after him like a light smoke. They left behind two ice-cold words, chase. Their sleeves fluttered in the wind as they rushed 100 feet away. The two emperor-level experts felt ashamed and resentful in their heart. That was because the same thought had emerged in their minds after they had seen that sword move. I would have been done for if that sword move had been aimed at me alone. I've never seen this sword move before. It's the best sword move since ancient times. The sword light was like a soaring dragon. It took Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan to turn a corner. Then, it finally stopped. Chu Yang fell to the ground with a puff sound. His whole body was powerless. He had used all of his strength in that sword move. He hadn't held anything back. Now, he didn't even have the strength to stand up. Chu Yang. Meng Chao Ran's eyes focused. He hadn't expected that his disciple would come to his rescue at this critical moment. Master. Chu Yang smiled weakly. He quickly swallowed an incomplete version of the heavy pill, and tried his best to restore his strength. Meng Chao Ran was startled. He had given up all hope, and was ready to die. But, his disciple had appeared out of nowhere, and saved his life. In that instant, Meng Chao Ran's heart surged like a tidal wave as thousands of thoughts flooded his mind. However, his reaction was extremely fast. He immediately hugged Chu Yang, and pulled Tan Tan with his other hand. Then, he fiercely sucked in a breath of air. His white jade-like face instantly turned blood-red. Then, he spat out a mouthful of air with a puff sound. His body flew out like an arrow that had left the bow. It was 3 times faster than his usual fastest speed. Igniting the watermark of setting sail would burn his vitality. Running at top speed. It was the same method that the two sovereigns had used to escape from the Hei Mo. Now, Meng Chao Ran was using it as well. Meng Chao Ran had always been indifferent to life and death. But now, his two disciples were by his side. So, he couldn't die. Not only could he not die, he also had to rescue his disciple, even if he had to risk his life. Meng Chao Ran's speed suddenly increased. He was carrying and dragging a person. It was as if he had the help of God. He quickly widened the distance between him and the people behind him. He turned a corner at lightning speed and disappeared. The experts of the Hei Mo clan were enraged. They rushed over as if they had gone crazy. 40 experts. 10 of them had died unknowingly. 5 of them had been killed by a sword. Only 25 were left. How could the 2 emperor-level experts of the Hei Mo clan endure this? Such a thing had happened under their leadership. The eyes of the 2 emperor-level experts had turned red. Where did this sword king come from? An emperor-level expert was seething with anger. This emperor-level expert was called Chen Wan Tong. He also used a sword. But, he didn't specialize in the sword. So, he naturally understood the terror of that sword attack. That swift and fierce sword attack had been like a combination of body and mind. And, the combination of mind and sword had been like a lightning bolt that had swept away everything in its path. No one except the Sword King could do that. Perhaps, none of these 30 people would have survived if it had been the Sword Emperor. Therefore, it could only be the Sword King. The other Emperor-level expert, Wu Jiang, was advancing side by side with him. He coldly said, "It doesn't matter if it's the Sword King or the Saber King. He will die today. Brother Qian, you don't need to be so anxious." The two of them looked at each other. Then, their figures accelerated at the same time. The 2 emperor-level experts had followed Meng Chao Ran's trail. They knew that they couldn't allow this person to escape beyond a certain distance. Otherwise, this person would disappear without a trace in an instant due to his concealment technique. Meng Chao Ran's green robe moved forward with all his might. He had learned and comprehended everything he had learned in his life along the way. But he hadn't held anything back. In fact, he had displayed it for a very long time. A ball of ice and snow flew out in another direction with the tip of his foot. And it hit the snow-covered ground with puff sounds. It seemed as if someone had run past here, however, that person had already turned in another direction. He had stepped on the snow-covered ground the moment his feet had switched places. And he had created several traces while borrowing the strength of the snow-covered ground. His figure had disappeared. And the traces he had left behind were exactly the same as the other illusions he had created. This required an extremely calm and ice-cold mind. Moreover, there was a purpose behind it every time. And the direction it was aimed at had a certain effect of confusion. Moreover, there were also obstacles that obstructed one's vision. Meng Chao Ran was holding Chu Yang with one hand and pulling Tan Tan with the other. His eyes were scanning all directions at the same time. And he was making accurate judgments in a split second. Moreover, he was also trying to figure out the mind of the pursuers. He was arranging illusions to confuse them, and was changing his route at any time. This kind of reaction ability could only be said to be a combination of innate talent, experience, intuition, and experience. None of them could be missing. Even the current Chu Yang couldn't compare to the things that Meng Chao Ran was doing right now. It was simply impossible. Tan Tan was in his master's arms. He looked at the crisscrossing marks that his master had set up behind them. And his eyes were wide open. I hadn't thought that my master had such a trick up his sleeve. How many life and death situations must he have experienced to have such experience and reaction? Chu Yang felt somewhat sour in his heart. How much has my master experienced? He has never spoken about it. He has always buried it in his heart. But this kind of experience can't be deceived. These things can't be figured out if one doesn't have many engraved life and death experiences. Meng Chao Ran had already widened the distance between himself and the enemy in a very short time. He finally stopped after he had turned into a mountain pass. And he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood as soon as he stopped. Chu Yang had asked him many times during this period of time. But Meng Chao Ran had pretended not to hear him. Listen. Meng Chao Ran's face had turned red. He looked at his two disciples with a fierce look in his eyes. Then, he said in an anxious and fast voice, "This is the way out. You two go out from that side. Use the tip of your toes to make that sputtering effect. Leave this place as soon as possible. You must survive no matter what happens in the future. Remember, survive. No matter what method you use, even if your knees turn into powder, you must survive. Don't die if you can survive." This person was indifferent to life and death. He was aloof and detached from worldly affairs. But he had said these words to his beloved younger brother at this moment of parting, to survive. "What about you, master?" Tan Tan anxiously asked. "Me. I obviously want to survive." Meng Chao Ran coldly smiled. He stretched out his hand and pointed, "I'll go from this side. We'll act separately. We'll go in two directions. Or, you can lure the enemy to chase after me, and protect me. Who knows? Let's go quickly." "Master." Tan Tan's eyes had turned red. He and Chu Yang knew that Meng Chao Ran had only said this to reassure them. Their master would definitely make a move as soon as the two of them left. And he would lure all the enemies away to create a chance for them to survive. Meng Chao Ran was obviously throwing away his life for the sake of his two younger brothers. "Why haven't you left yet? What are you waiting for?" Meng Chao Ran shouted in a low voice. "Master." Chu Yang resisted the eruption of emotions in his chest with great difficulty. He said word by word, "You don't need to do this. I can deal with them." It was the ultimate move, sword spirit possession. Chu Yang didn't want to use it. That's because it would increase his dependence on it every time he used it. Moreover, it would cause great damage to his spirit and the sword spirit's divine spirit. Chu Yang had never planned to use it in the past, even if he had to die in a bad situation. However, he was going to use this ultimate move now. He couldn't watch his master die no matter what. I'll have to use the last move if this move doesn't work. I'll use my heart's blood to destroy 10,000 tribulations. I won't hesitate, even if I have to reincarnate again. Do you have a plan? Meng Chao Ran's eyes focused as he looked at Chu Yang. Yes. Chu Yang stood up and swayed twice. He felt the medicinal efficacy of the heavy pill inside his body surging violently. His complexion turned rosy in an instant. He had recovered his strength. Don't try to be brave. Where there's life, there's hope, Meng Chao Ran said in a low voice. His face had turned deathly pale because of this moment's delay. The price of igniting the power of the beginning of the voyage to escape was undoubtedly disastrous. Master, if this green mountain doesn't exist anymore, I won't have any face for the rest of my life even if I manage to escape. How disloyal and unfilial would it be if I used my master's life to survive? Chu Yang said word by word. Meng Chao Ran heaved a long sigh. He knew that Chu Yang had thoroughly understood his thoughts. You were doing well in the dark. Why did you come out? Meng Chao Ran looked at Chu Yang with a look of regret. Master hasn't reunited with Master's wife yet. His life is still of great use. Chu Yang slowly said, as for the pursuers, I'll deal with them alone. Master's wife. Meng Chao Ran was startled. What do you know? Master's wife. Tan Tan was shocked. Master has a wife. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran were left speechless by Tan Tan's words in such a solemn and stirring atmosphere. Master has a wife. There's a difference in seniority between Master and Master's wife. Meng Chao Ran's face darkened. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head. He took out an incomplete version of the heavy pill and stuffed it into Meng Chao Ran's mouth. Then, he fiercely looked at Tan Tan and shouted, I'll settle this account with you after I kill these bastards. Tan Tan clicked his tongue and rolled his eyes. I'm so scared. The sound of clothes fluttering in the air resounded. A furious voice said, let's see where you're going to run. They saw that Chu Yang had already stood up. Then, he faced upwards and let out a long and loud roar. This howl was tragic and stirring. But, it suddenly changed into a bleak, desolate, lonely, and tyrannical howl halfway through the sound. It was a long and loud howl. Chapter 531. The Emperor-level expert of the Black Devil clan, Qian Wn Tong, was the first one to find this place. But, he was so scared by this long howl that he started to shiver. Qian Wn Tong was still disdainful when the first half of this long howl had come out. Motherfucker, why are you howling when your death is at hand? But, the howl suddenly changed, and endless murderous aura gushed out. Qian Wn Tong felt goosebumps all over his body. His hair stood on end. It seemed as if his scalp had tightened at this moment. A cold air rose from his tailbone. It went up to the top of his head, and went down to the bottom of his body. He quivered as he felt a chill run down his spine. I have never heard such a sound. Even Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan were indescribably surprised as they looked at Chu Yang in front of them. They were somewhat at a loss. Both of them clearly felt that the current Chu Yang and the previous Chu Yang weren't the same person. This feeling didn't make any sense. But, it was real. Chu Yang's back was facing Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan. He was facing Qian Wn Tong with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were cold and disdainful. His face was still the same, and his body was still the same. But, an endless bleakness and vicissitudes of life was gushing out. It seemed as if this figure had been standing alone at the top of the world, for tens of millions of years. The person standing here wasn't Chu Yang. Instead, it was the sword spirit who had stood at the top of the world for 10,000 years. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The people of the Black Devil clan flew over from all directions after that long howl had been issued. It seemed as if they had received a summons. 25 people had gathered here in an instant. Not a single one of them had been left behind. Chu Yang's face was expressionless. He lightly stepped forward, and insipidly asked with his hands clasped behind his back, "Are these the only people?" The 25 people in front of him, including the 2 emperor-level experts, felt a strange feeling at the same time as he spoke. The sky has suddenly collapsed and the earth has sunk in front of me. It seemed as if there was an invisible whirlpool that was forcing my spirit down. And there was a bottomless abyss below. They firmly closed their eyes and shook their heads. Then, they opened their eyes again. However, everything was still misty in front of them. White snow was fluttering in the air. Everything was the same as before. But where did that terrifying feeling come from? Stinky brat. You're trying to mystify us, a king-level expert angrily shouted. Qian Wantong and Wu Jiang looked at each other and saw the bewilderment in each other's eyes. Could it be that this youngster is a great expert whom we have never seen before? How could such a terrifying aura be something that could be faked so easily? Could it be that this was a trap? That's impossible. I wasn't pretending to be in such a sorry state. Qian Wentong rolled his eyes and said, Old Third Shen, go and cripple him. He would first send someone to investigate the situation. As for whether Old Third Shen would cripple that person or if that person would cripple Old Third Shen, that was not something he could decide. For Qian Wentong, sacrificing a man's life to test the waters was something that he ought to do. In fact, it had nothing to do with him. Third Elder Shen leapt out and gracefully circled in the air. He pulled out his sword in midair and shouted, Draw your sword. Let me teach you a lesson. Huh! Chuyong slowly turned his head. His eyes opened wide, and a terrifying aura burst out with a loud rumble. It condensed and covered Third Elder Shen's head. Third Elder Shen had assumed a handsome and confident posture in midair. He was about to descend when he suddenly screamed. His mind had fallen into chaos. It seemed as if he had suddenly fallen into the boundless darkness of hell. His vision turned black, and he let out a pitiful scream as he fell down. However, he didn't know what had happened when he was about to descend. In fact, he was kneeling in front of Chu Yang. His entire body was trembling, and his face was deathly pale. Teach me a lesson. Chu Yang raised his head in a somewhat frustrated manner. He then muttered in an inaudible voice, I haven't heard these words for 100,000 years. It's really fresh. It seemed as if he was standing defenseless. He was looking up, sighing, and reminiscing. It seemed as if Third Elder Shen only needed to lift his hand, and his sword would pierce his throat. However, Third Elder Shen was still kneeling on the ground with his head lowered. His entire body was sweating profusely. His face was so red that it seemed as if it would bleed at any moment. But he couldn't raise his head even a little bit. Third Elder Shen had regained his consciousness by now. He was feeling endless humiliation for kneeling in front of the enemy in front of so many people. He was so ashamed that he almost wanted to commit suicide. But he was helpless. Qian Wentong and Wu Jiang's eyes bulged out when they saw this scene. Then, they sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Who was Third Elder Shen? He was a 7th grade king-level expert. Even the two of them wouldn't have been able to take him down so easily. However, this man didn't even need to lift a finger. He had used his imposing aura to press him down to the ground. Suddenly, they looked at Chu Yang with horror in their eyes. Chu Yang was still looking up to the sky and sighing. He slowly recited, I bid farewell to the sun and moon. I bid farewell to the mortal world for 10,000 years. I drifted at the peak. I didn't see the vicissitudes of life, nor did I see the immortals. He slightly lowered his head after he was done speaking. He sighed softly, shook his head helplessly, and said, I really don't want to kill anyone. He stretched out his right hand's 5 fingers, and gently lowered them. Then, he pulled out Third Elder Shen's head from his neck with a catcher sound, as if he was pulling out grass. He raised his head and sighed. He raised his hand to kill someone. He was still bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. But his hands were already ruthless and merciless. He continued his unfinished words at this time. Unfortunately, this is my mission. I really don't want to kill anyone. Unfortunately, this is my mission. This was a complete sentence. Unfortunately, Third Elder Shen could only hear the first half of the sentence. Then, his soul departed from the world. Blood gushed out from his headless neck. Chu Yang slightly sighed and said, "He's so pitiful. He died like this. Ah, decades of painstaking cultivation. It was destroyed in one day. Why bother?" Chen Wen Tong and Wu Jiang felt a chill in their hearts as they saw this. Everyone, including the dead third elder Shen, felt relieved when Chu Yang had said, "I really don't want to kill anyone." They had heaved a sigh of relief. "You don't want to kill anyone? That's great. Who would have thought that this guy would grab his head in the blink of an eye?" It was as if a farmer had pulled out a green foxtail from his own vegetable field. It was so easy. He had killed someone with his own hands. But, he still said in a very sad manner, decades of painstaking cultivation died like this. Fuck. Is he still a human? Everyone felt dizzy. Then, they saw Chu Yang turn his head and look at Chen Wen Tong. He insipidly said, "You're the leader. Come on, please give me a reason to kill you." Chen Wen Tong's scalp exploded. He couldn't help but stumble back 3 steps. Then, he suddenly felt dizzy. So, he roared, "Everyone, let's attack him together. He's only one person no matter how strong he is. Let's work together to kill him." This order was resolute and decisive. It was overflowing with murderous intention. Everyone issued a shout, and ferociously rushed forward under Wu Jiang's leadership. "Kill!" Chen Wen Tong cried. He swore to God that he hadn't wanted to say those words. What he really wanted to say was, "Everyone, scatter." But, he didn't know why he had felt dizzy. So, he had roared out those heroic words to court death. "The opposite party had asked me to give a reason a moment ago. And, I've come up with this reason in the blink of an eye. This is a reason to court death." Tears streamed down Chen Wen Tong's face. Chu Yang burst into loud laughter along with the flow of people rushing forward. He was laughing. But, that kind of loneliness that belonged to the vicissitudes of ancient times was still congealed and rippling. Then, he threw the head away. His arms shook, and the jade crown on his head burst open with a bang. His black hair fluttered, and soared to the sky. A biting cold murderous aura suddenly gushed out. It seemed as if the entire northern wilderness was shrouded in it. The complexions of Wu Jiang and the others who had rushed forward turned pale. Their eyes emitted a look of extreme fear. They couldn't help but stop their footsteps. Chu Yang slowly moved forward. His black robe suddenly turned as deep as the night. Countless sword energies shot out from his body as if they were tangible. He stretched out his right hand, and a snow-white long sword appeared in his palm with a clang sound. It issued a cheerful sword cry. Chu Yang casually waved his hand, and drew out a sword flower. He then recited in a long voice, "I roam the world unhindered. What's difficult with a sword in my hand? Beheading the whole world isn't enough. Slaughtering the entire world isn't easy." Chu Yang's black-clothed silhouette floated forward as he recited these words. He looked at the experts in front of him as if they were nothing. His long hair fluttered in the wind. He slowly moved forward step by step. But, he looked like a ghost in the white snow in the eyes of the others. "Blood surges like 1,000 feet wave under my sword. Bones rise like a mountain under my feet. The first drop of blood hasn't even turned cold yet. Ha ha ha. I'm happy." He roared, "I'm happy." Suddenly, a sword energy was sent out across the sky. It went straight up to the horizon. And, it blasted away the heavy snow in the sky with a bang. Then, a ray of sunlight shone in. The sunlight was weak but brilliant. The white snow fluttered in the northern wilderness. It fluttered in the air. And, this ray of sunlight illuminated the entire place with a dreamlike and blurry color. This was the first time that the northern wilderness had seen sunlight in 10,000 years. It was a sword energy that had broken through the clouds in the sky. And, it had stirred up a hole. No one had noticed that Tan Tan's eyes had suddenly emitted a red radiance behind Chu Yang's back at this moment. He had looked straight at that sword energy that had pierced through the sky. And, he had become stunned. The red light flashed and disappeared. But, Tan Tan had fallen down softly. He had sat on the ground, and had fainted. However, the high temperature that had been burning his entire body had miraculously disappeared at this moment. It seemed as if this terrifying sword energy had stimulated something. It seemed as if it had awakened something, or touched something. Suddenly, another sword energy soared into the sky from a distant place at this moment. It was surging and majestic. And it had pierced a big hole in the sky. It seemed as if an ancient demon had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Then, another ray of sunlight shone in. These two rays of light had suddenly appeared in the dusky sky. It seemed as if a sleeping giant had suddenly opened its eyes at this moment. That sword light flashed and disappeared. Chu Yang fiercely looked in that direction. And his eyes exposed a fervent look. He softly said in an almost inaudible voice, "There." Then, he slowly turned his head. He slowly raised his head, and looked at the 24 people in front of him. His long hair fluttered in the wind. He faintly smiled. Come and die." Chapter 532. Chen Wn Tong, Wu Jiang, and the others felt ice-cold from head to toe. They turned around, and fled in all directions. Who would dare to fight a head-on battle in the face of such a monstrous genius? Only a brainless person would do such a thing. We are so unlucky. We were so close to getting the core of a spirit beast. But someone stole it. And we were so close to getting it again. But someone suddenly appeared out of nowhere, killed 15 of our people, and escaped. And we were so close to getting it again. But it turned out to be a fatal trap. Run. They wanted to cry in their hearts as they fled. You are such an unprecedented expert. Why are you showing weakness to us? Motherfucker. Everyone was in high spirits. Did you have to go that far? We would have been blinded by greed if we had known that you were such an expert. We wouldn't have dared to provoke a killing god like you. You want to leave? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. His dense aura pervaded the air. Do you think you can? He took a step forward, and slashed his sword down. It seemed as if he had crossed the void with this step. He had crossed a distance of 500 feet in one step. He arrived in front of Chen Wn Tong, and coldly looked at him. His gaze was ice-cold. His sword fell down like lightning. Chen Wn Tong screamed in despair. He desperately propped up his emperor-level domain, and used all his strength to block. However, this sword had ignored his domain and his block. It had chopped down. His sword had broken, and his body had been divided into two halves. His body hadn't even fallen to the ground when two Shua sounds were heard. And two king-level experts had been split into two halves in the air 100 feet away. Blood was dripping everywhere. The remaining people were scared out of their wits. They desperately tried to escape. Chu Yang caught up with them with large strides. He pointed his sword, and a sword energy flew out from the tip of his sword. It pierced Wu Jiang's chest 1,000 feet away, and left a bowl-sized bloody hole in it. The sword energy went through Wu Jiang's chest, and blasted a big hole in the mountain in front of him with a loud bang. Then, Chu Yang turned around in the air, and issued a sword light. The king-level expert on his left was neatly cut into two halves from the waist down. The upper part of his body flew up. But the lower part of his body was still madly running for several hundred feet. All the vegetation in the vicinity had been neatly cut off. The forest was destroyed. Chu Yang's body flashed the moment the sword light flew out. Then, he disappeared into thin air, and arrived in the south. He killed 5 king-level experts with one sword strike each. Then, he let out a long and loud shout, and soared into the sky along with his blood energy and murderous intention. He flew high up in the sky for thousands of feet. It was as if he was a crazed demon who wanted to kill everything. He chased after the remaining 7 king-level experts of the Black Devil clan in the half-cloud and half-fog. Shua, one of the king-level leaders, fell on his back in disbelief. A faint blood-red light appeared between his eyebrows. Then, with a bang, blood gushed out from his forehead. His body slowly separated from his body. It was like a watermelon that was cut in half from the middle. The two halves of his body fell to the ground. Chu Yang had already passed through the endless wilderness like a beam of flowing light, and beheaded the remaining 7 people one by one. Merciless, clean and efficient. The smell of fresh blood always makes me infatuated. Sword Spirit sighed, it's a pity that I can't stay outside for a long time. My spiritual power has been consumed a lot. Chu Yang's body flashed, and he left the place. Then, he flashed again, and arrived in front of Meng Chao Ran. Then, Chu Yang's body suddenly trembled, and softly fell down. He clenched his teeth, and fell unconscious. Meng Chao Ran was still in a state of extreme shock at this moment. He had never dreamt that his disciple could use such an earth-shattering and terrifying method. He had slaughtered 30 experts of the Black Devil clan in an instant. He had killed them all. The swordlight danced like a divine dragon. Heads rolled, and blood splashed everywhere. The battle had ended in an instant. Meng Chao Ran was stunned when he saw Chu Yang flying over. He was about to greet him and ask what had happened. But, he saw his good disciple fall to the ground. He was foaming at the mouth. His whole body was convulsing, and he had fainted. Meng Chao Ran turned around, and saw that his other disciple, Tan Tan, was also foaming at the mouth. His whole body was convulsing, and he had fainted. Meng Chao Ran was helpless. It seems that I'm destined to be a babysitter for you too. Meng Chao Ran heaved a big sigh. First, he collected the spoils of war that were scattered all over the ground. Master Meng was a very meticulous person. He would never let go of such an opportunity. Then, he stacked his 2 disciples together, and carried them like sacks. He huffed and puffed as he carried them for a while. Then, he finally found a cave. He threw the 2 brothers into the cave. Then, he sat down to take a breather. He sat down, and found that the serious injuries that he had sustained while running had been healed. Healed? Meng Chao Ran was really puzzled. How can I be healed? Immediately, he remembered that Chu Yang had stuffed a pill into his mouth before he made his move. Is it because of that pill? But, how can there be such a miraculous pill in the world? Meng Chao Ran felt that his whole body was full of energy. It seemed that he could even fight an emperor-level expert. He couldn't help but be startled. The most outrageous thing was, he found that he wasn't injured. Moreover, the bottleneck of the 8th grade king-level expert's primary power seemed to be loosening. He tried to circulate it. Suddenly, a copious amount of power gushed out of his dantian. It flooded his meridians, and then poured into his dantian. After 3 circulations like this, Meng Chao Ran was surprised to find that he had broken through to the 2nd grade king level so easily. Moreover, his primary power was still increasing. He felt uncomfortable all over his body. So, he simply continued to circulate it, and absorbed it all into his dantian. Meng Chao Ran's complexion was very strange when he stood up. It seemed as if he wanted to cry, and also as if he wanted to laugh. He frowned for a while, and then stared for a while. He found that he had made a breakthrough. A 1st grade emperor-level expert. Moreover, his current strength was stuck at the peak of 1st grade emperor-level expert. He could break through to 2nd grade emperor-level expert as long as an opportunity appeared. This is really dizzying. This used to be my lifelong wish. But, I made a breakthrough in such a muddle-headed situation. Moreover, I shouldn't have made a breakthrough. Why did I make a breakthrough? Meng Chao Ran was shocked by this result. He couldn't breathe for a long time. Then, he remembered, this is bad. Why did I put Chu Yang and Tan Tan together? I'm dizzy. Don't roast Chu Yang this time. He hurriedly ran in, and separated the 2. He then touched them. Hey! Chu Yang is fine. Is this eldest disciple so resistant to heat? He then touched Tan Tan again. Meng Chao Ran opened his eyes wide. Why isn't he burning? He then touched Tan Tan again. Master Meng was dumbfounded. These things happened one after another. It could be said that it was too much for the eyes to take in. Master Meng's psychological endurance was very strong. But, he kept encountering such unexplainable things one after another. Moreover, they were happening so densely, he was helpless. Meng Chao Ran fiercely pinched his thigh. He grimaced in pain. This isn't a dream. He couldn't help but stare blankly. A long time passed. Chu Yang groaned, and weakly got up. But, Meng Chao Ran was still immersed in these things, and couldn't extricate himself. Master, are you okay? Chu Yang stroked his forehead. His head hurt a little. It seemed as if thousands of steel needles were pricking his head. He felt completely powerless all over his body. In fact, he felt as if his joints were breaking. It was a kind of weak feeling that came from his soul. The effects of the sword spirit entering his body had left Chu Yang with a strong lingering fear. Chu Yang didn't want to experience this kind of uncomfortable feeling a second time, even though he had a tenacious mind. The sword spirit in his mind was also in a weak state. It had already entered the array of the mysterious yin jade and the mysterious yang jade, and was recovering with all its might. Even though he had recovered quite a bit during this period of time, the exhaustion this time was not small. Chu Yang. Meng Chao Ran's voice was very heavy. You seem to have too many secrets. Yes, Master. Chu Yang chuckled. Well, you don't need to tell me since it's a secret. Meng Chao Ran warned, it's best if you don't tell anyone. Let it rot in your heart. He sighed and said, such a secret is too powerful. I'm afraid. His face exposed a deeply worried expression as he solemnly looked at his proud younger brother. There are countless powerhouses in this world. The so-called king-level experts and emperor-level experts are nothing more than fleeting clouds. It's not impossible for even more powerful existences to exist. No one will be able to protect you in case something happens. Yi Shiwen sighed and said, you don't know how many powerhouses there are in this world. Meng Chao Ran looked deeply into Chu Yang's eyes. Do you understand? I understand. Chu Yang replied seriously. He had already understood Meng Chao Ran's character. But he still admired Meng Chao Ran for being able to restrain himself from asking after experiencing so many things today. Someone as strong as Duke Yu still wanted to ask. But Meng Chao Ran didn't want to ask no matter what. He would rather let his brother rot the secret. He would rather not know it for the rest of his life. He would rather keep it a secret for the rest of his life. Master, I didn't realize that your willpower was so strong in the past, Chu Yang said from the bottom of his heart. Ha ha. Everyone has their own family, parents, wives, and children. You and I are master and disciple. Our relationship is like that of a father and a son. Naturally, we can talk about anything. But if I meet someone, I can't keep a secret. Everyone has someone like me who can't keep a secret from them. So, once a secret enters the ears of a second person, it will no longer be a secret. Meng Chao Ran said, so, I don't want to listen even though you want to tell me. Yes, Master. Chu Yang replied respectfully. Then, he asked, Master, there's one thing that I don't understand. Meng Chao Ran asked, what is it? Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, Master's willpower can't be said to be the best in the world. But I haven't found anyone else who can compare with you. So, Master's cultivation should be. But why? He paused. Meng Chao Ran chuckled and said, it's very simple, because something happened to me in the past. Someone hit me with the melting meridian's hand because of your master's wife. Melting meridian's hand? Chu Yang's entire body shook. His eyes revealed a sharp splendor. Is this the unique martial art of the #1 ruling clan of the heavenly layer? So, it's the melting meridian's hand of 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 the melting meridian's hand? Chapter 533. The transforming meridian's hand was the most powerful weapon of the Yi clan. A person would be finished as long as they were hit by this palm. This martial art wasn't fatal. But it was more vicious than any other martial art that could kill a person, because, after using this martial art, the meridians of the entire body would disappear within 3 days no matter what level of cultivation one had. How would one's spiritual power circulate without meridians? As time passed, the person who was hit by the transforming meridian's hand would gradually become a living dead who couldn't even move a finger. But his mind would still be very clear. In fact, it could even be said that if one's eyes were open after 3 days of being hit by the transforming meridian's hand, they wouldn't even be able to close their eyes. This was the real horror. Especially for an expert, it was worse than death. Yes. Meng Chao Ran smiled faintly, a trace of deep pain flashing past between his brows, as if his spirit had spasmed at this moment. He said, "Your master's wife, in order to save me, agreed to return to the clan in exchange for my life. But 2.5 days had already passed. So, my meridians had already become rigid even after I had taken the antidote." Meng Chao Ran stared blankly for a moment. Then, he exhaled and said, "So, I could only stay in the Beyond the Heavens sect for the time being. I was at death's door. So, that's how it is." Chu Yang's eyes turned cold as he slowly said. Even he himself did not feel the chill in his words. Just how deep was the chill in his words? Yi Clan. Yi Clan. However, since last year, there have been 2 accidents. These 2 accidents have given me a little hope. Meng Chao Ran looked at Chu Yang warmly, and, "One of these accidents came from you, and the other one came from Tan Tan." 2 accidents came from me and Tan Tan? Chu Yang was puzzled. What accident? Yes, the first accident came from Tan Tan's divine Kai-gathering fish. Meng Chao Ran sighed and said, "I accidentally discovered that the divine Kai-gathering fish grew very fast under Tan Tan's care. Moreover, the divine Kai-gathering fish didn't have to be restrained by the transforming meridian's hand to absorb the spiritual power of the heaven and earth. So, I could continue to improve my cultivation. Moreover, the spiritual power was exceptionally fast and condensed. Therefore, I was able to cultivate to the 8th grade of king level in a little more than a year." "I see. This must be the effect of the divine Kai-gathering fish." There was one more time. "It was today." Meng Chao Ran said, "It came from the pill you gave me. After I took it, I found that my injuries were all healed." Then, he rushed into the 1st grade emperor level in one fell swoop. Meng Chao Ran chuckled. "This is a miracle." Miracle? Chu Yang was dumbstruck. He was immediately stunned. The pill he took out earlier was clearly an incomplete version of the heavy pill. It was only effective for healing injuries. How could Meng Chao Ran use it to increase his cultivation? What was going on? Could it be that he had taken the wrong one? That was impossible. Because Mo Qingwu had already consumed the last complete heavy pill. Right now, Chu Yang didn't have a complete heavy pill in his hands. What was going on? Chu Yang was at a loss. The sword spirit was regulating his breathing at the moment. So, Chu Yang had no one to ask. So, he had no choice but to suppress this matter in his heart. He secretly made a decision in his heart: when the sword spirit wakes up, I must make a complete heavy pill to completely heal Master and increase his strength. While he was at it, he could also ask about this incomplete heavy pill. Is Master's wife in the Yi clan now? Chu Yang asked cautiously. Meng Chao Ran's eyes dimmed as he said, yes. Then, he stopped talking about this matter. Chu Yang had no choice but to remain silent. He could see that there were too many stories behind this. But, if Meng Chao Ran didn't want to talk about it, he naturally couldn't ask. This was the heartache of Master's life. Meng Chao Ran was silent for a while. His eyes unconsciously looked at the fluttering white snow outside the cave. He softly murmured, wind and rain cannot wash away the scars of the heart, the vicissitudes of life cannot extinguish the wounds of love. Don't speak lightly of the ancient times, only when we are separated can we see the desolation. Changyi Mountain pledge of eternal love, I would rather ask for an everlasting spring dream in this life, watching Jun Qingwu saw. Our souls sail together. Alas. Suddenly, he sighed deeply. His eyes dimmed, and he didn't speak anymore. After a long time, he stood up bleakly and walked out. He stood motionless in the snow. He looked up at the sky and gazed silently. It was as if he could see his lover in the upper 3 heavens from this snowy sky. He looked so attentively and attentively. He stood like this for a long time. Then, he sighed deeply in his heart. He said silently in his heart, this poem was written by Chu Chu. Chu Chen, are you okay? Thinking of this name, Meng Chaoran suddenly felt as if his heart had been torn into 2 bloody halves in an instant. He bent over in pain and curled up in the snow. He suddenly felt such heartache that he couldn't breathe. Only his heart was burning. In fact, it was getting more and more scorching hot. In fact, it seemed as if it was going to burn his soul. Choo choo, choo choo, choo choo. Meng Chao Ran repeatedly murmured in his heart. He wouldn't feel like he was in the mortal world if he didn't call this name. However, his heart would be fiercely cut open every time he called it. Choo-choo, what should I do? You promised me that our souls sail together. But, it's so difficult for me. Even dying together has become an extravagant hope. He finally closed his eyes slowly. 2 drops of tears fell from the corners of this man's eyes. He wouldn't change even in the face of death. They slowly seeped out. The pain of love is like this. Who could understand Meng Chao Ran's heartache at this moment if they hadn't experienced the despair of love? Chu Yang silently sat in the cave, and kept watch over Tan Tan. He didn't turn his head to look outside. He knew that Meng Chao Ran didn't want anyone to see him at this moment. He could understand Meng Chao Ran's despair. Is this how I felt after Mo Ching Wu's death in my previous life? A heart full of deep love, but no place to express it. Can it only turn into torment for myself? Of course, it's one of the greatest tragedies in the world. But, isn't it also the greatest tragedy in life that you can't express your love in your heart? How many people in the world can accompany the person whom they truly love from the very beginning? Then, what about the people who love each other? They can only bury it deep in their heart. Eventually, it will become a lifetime of painful memories. It will become a lifetime of mental torture. Chu Yang was somewhat dazed. He recalled a sentence that a philosopher had once said. The heavens make fools of people. The most speechless thing is that every man who gets drunk unconsciously murmurs the name of his last wife. The deepest pain in a woman's heart isn't her husband, but they can only involuntarily call out that name in the middle of the night or when they lose control of their minds. Who can say that they are unfaithful? But, who has ever experienced this kind of pain? Who has ever felt this kind of helplessness? Who has ever felt this kind of bitterness? Author's note, this is purely what Fengling was thinking in his heart at this moment. Maybe it's a little partial. Chu Yang sighed sadly. Master is in his prime. That Yi Chu Chen is also in her prime. Why can't they be together? Can't I help Master fulfill his wish? Chu Yang was silent. He silently made this decision in his heart. 3 days passed. Chu Yang had already fully recovered. But, Tan Tan was still unconscious. Both Meng Chao Ran and Chu Yang were extremely worried. Because Tan Tan's unconsciousness this time was really very unusual. In the first 2 days, he was only unconscious. But, from the 3rd day onwards, his body became hot and cold. When it was cold, it could freeze and crack all the stones in the cave. When it was hot, even Chu Yang couldn't stand it when he was beside Tan Tan Tan. This kind of strange phenomenon was something that both master and disciple had never seen before. They had never even heard of it. Who would have thought that a person's body temperature could change like this? When it was cold, it could freeze and crack the stones. When it was hot, it could melt the stones. Fuck, what the hell is this? Master, does Tan Tan do this often? Chu Yang finally couldn't help but ask. What's going on? He even stuffed an incomplete version of the heavy core into his mouth. But, he still spat it out. Doesn't this thing turn into spirit energy as soon as it enters his mouth? Never. Meng Chao Ran's face was heavy. He looked at the unconscious Tan Tan, and said anxiously. What's going on? Chu Yang was depressed. He ate the inner core of a spirit beast. Meng Chao Ran heaved a long sigh, then, his whole body became hot. So hot that my hands started to blister. But, he didn't get cold. Meng Chao Ran frowned. He ate the inner core of a spirit beast. Chu Yang was gobsmacked. Then, he opened his eyes wide. This guy swallowed the inner core of a spirit beast alive. But, he didn't explode. He swallowed it whole. Meng Chao Ran was somewhat speechless as he added. Chu Yang opened his mouth wide. The inner core of a spirit beast is at least as big as a fist. The biggest one is even as big as a watermelon. He swallowed it whole? How did he swallow it? Like this. Meng Chao Ran forced a smile, and gestured at his neck, here bulged, and then slowly fell down. Ha ha ha. Chu Yang was very worried. But, he was also very amused by his master's action. 2 days passed. Tan Tan finally woke up. The sword spirit had already recovered in the past few days. But he kept urging Chu Yang to look for that wisp of remnant organ. He was 100% sure that the wisp of sword energy that had been emitted from afar when he had released the sword energy and triggered the strange phenomenon in the world. And that wisp of sword energy had reacted to that wisp of remnant organ, but Chu Yang wasn't moved. You want to leave before the matter here is settled? No way. Even if it's a big matter, you must put it down for me. Tan Tan finally woke up on this day. Chu Yang nodded sleepily. But Tan Tan suddenly turned over and sat up. He let out a long sigh. Oh my God, my whole body hurts from sleeping. Tan Tan, you're awake? Chu Yang was pleasantly surprised as he turned his head. Chapter 534. Meng Chao Ran turned his head away as he couldn't bear to look. Chu Yang scratched his head and asked curiously, "Why are you so shocked? Stop talking nonsense. Look at me. Am I handsome now?" Tan Tan said in shock. Handsome. Handsome. Chu Yang said with certainty, "I've always thought that Tan Tan is the most handsome man in the world. The most handsome man." Tan Tan was satisfied. He was overjoyed. So, he started to laugh. His face had been barely visible when he had been shocked. But it had once again turned into a tragic sight. He beamed with joy as he said, "More handsome than you, right?" "Of course." Chu Yang sighed deeply and said, "You're much more handsome than me." "Ah ha ha ha." Tan Tan laughed complacently and said, "Chu Yang, you're the best. Every time I ask Master this question, he won't give me a direct answer." Meng Chao Ran looked at the two clowns in front of him and sighed helplessly. "I understand. I completely understand. I understand where Tan Tan's character comes from. It's because Chu Yang has spoiled him." Meng Chao Ran felt even more wronged as he looked at Tan Tan's satisfied and happy appearance. So, this guy only needs one affirmation to be honest. But why didn't I think of that? But I can't go against my conscience and say that he's handsome. I'll feel guilty if I say it. Tan Tan smiled proudly. Then, he suddenly exclaimed, "Why don't I have a fever?" Then, he grabbed Chu Yang's hand and asked repeatedly, "Is it hot? Is it hot?" Chu Yang smiled, "It's not hot." "Ah ha ha." Tan Tan jumped up and down. "Don't burn it, don't burn it. There won't be a problem in the bridal chamber. I've been worried that I'll cook the bride if I continue to burn it during the bridal chamber." "Ha ha ha. I won't burn it. I don't need to make cold ice armor." A black line condensed on Meng Chao Ran's forehead. He shouted, "Stop." Tan Tan kept quiet out of fear. Chu Yang carefully sized up Tan Tan. He suddenly realized that this junior apprentice brother was somewhat different. His face was still the same, but the tips of his eyebrows were faintly golden. In the middle of his forehead, there was a small triangle that looked like a fragment. It was only the size of a soybean. At first glance, it looked like a small scar. His chest seemed to have changed as well, but only a little could be seen. "Take off your clothes," Chu Yang said. "What are you doing?" Tan Tan grabbed his lapel in alarm. He was somewhat shivering. "What do you want to do?" Meng Chao Ran had also discovered Tan Tan's abnormality. So, he shouted, "Take off your clothes." Tan Tan was aggrieved. He looked at his master and senior martial brother in despair. His eyes slowly exposed a tragic expression. Then, he lowered his head. His lips trembled as he said, "All right. I will sacrifice myself this time. All right." Then, with a swish, he took off his clothes. Tan Tan's movements were extremely fast. He had closed his eyes. But he had taken off his clothes in a matter of seconds. In fact, he was completely naked. He was openly displayed in front of the two men, as if he was a newborn baby. His eyelashes were still trembling even though his eyes were closed. "You have to be quick and gentle, boo-hoo. This is the first time I have done such a thing." Meng Chao Ran's face suddenly turned purple. Chu Yang was also dumbfounded. He looked at the dangling thing under someone's crotch, and couldn't help but want to retch. "Put on your pants. Who told you to take off your clothes? Evil creature, you evil creature." Meng Chao Ran's face turned black as he loudly cursed. Chu Yang had never seen his master get angry. So, he was stunned. He felt as if the world had been turned upside down. Isn't master always indifferent, aloof, and carefree? Since when did he speak in such a loud voice? Tan Tan was also startled. He opened his eyes, and looked as if he was about to cry. He lifted his pants to his waist, and cautiously asked, You don't want to your head. Meng Chao Ran was so angry that he couldn't vent his anger. So, he ruthlessly knocked on Tan Tan's head. So, it wasn't you. You scared me to death. Tan Tan felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He quickly put on his pants, and said in a somewhat embarrassed manner, I thought that you two couldn't hold it in after not venting for so long. Puff. Meng Chao Ran and Chu Yang simultaneously kicked Tan Tan. Tan Tan screamed as he was sent flying. He was stuck on the wall of the cave with his arms and legs spread out. Don't move. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran rushed forward. Both of them had just discovered that there seemed to be a flash of light on Tan Tan's chest. They couldn't help but be startled. So, they moved closer. They saw that there was a triangular-shaped damaged thing on Tan Tan's chest. This piece was faintly emitting a golden light. Chu Yang touched it with his hand. He felt that it wasn't human flesh. It was very hard. He couldn't help but say, Master, you touch it. Meng Chao Ran also touched it. He was puzzled as he said, It's strange. Both of them were very familiar with Tan Tan's body. They knew that there wasn't such a thing before. So, why did it suddenly appear now? Tan Tan was stuck on the wall with his arms and legs spread out. He saw that Chu Yang and his master had come over. They were looking at him without taking their eyes off him. They were touching his body again and again. He couldn't help but feel numb and cold all over his body. His chrysanthemum tightened. He desperately screamed, Help! I'm being raped. The three of them were walking in the heavy snow. Meng Chao Ran was in the front. Chu Yang was in the second place. Tan Tan had been beaten up like a bag. This guy had called out rape. So, his master and senior martial brothers had mercilessly ganged up on him. He had almost been beaten to death. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran were also somewhat depressed. Tan Tan's physique seems to have changed. The two of them had beaten him for a while. But, they had discovered that this guy didn't feel any pain. So, they had increased their strength. However, they had already used 70 to 80% of their strength. But, Tan Tan was still fine. His body was covered in bruises. It was a tragic sight. However, his bones and internal organs weren't damaged at all. The two of them were panting after they had finished. They looked at Tan Tan with indescribable amazement. How did this bastard turn into a person who can't be killed? The three of them set out after Tan Tan had put on his clothes. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran didn't notice it. Tan Tan himself didn't notice it either. Half of the triangular tattoo on his forehead was faintly flashing. The tip of his eyebrows was also flashing. The part of his chest that was covered by his clothes was flashing under his clothes. Then, the bruises on Tan Tan's body slowly disappeared. They slowly turned into nothingness. He was still screaming in pain after they had walked for more than 10 miles. However, there wasn't even a single scar on his body. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran clicked their tongues in amazement after they had discovered this. Chu Yang suddenly had a feeling as he looked at Tan Tan's narcissistic and lazy face. This junior martial brother of mine doesn't seem to be an ordinary person. Sword Spirit was also called out by Chu Yang. But, he also didn't know anything. I've never seen such a physique. I've never seen such an ugly person. Chu Yang had no choice but to give up. He had given up the idea of investigating Tan Tan. During this period of time, the Sword Spirit was also very sullen. After his spiritual power recovered, he immediately asked to go in the direction where the sword light came from. But, he was coerced by Chu Yang to refine a complete version of the heavy pill. So, he had no choice but to pinch his nose and accept it. Sword Spirit had scoffed at the fact that the incomplete version of the heavy pill could enhance Meng Chao Ran's martial power. You still don't understand? Your master's meridians have been frozen forever after he had practiced the melting meridian's hand. But he has never given up in the past 10 years. He has been practicing the melting meridian's hand technique. So, his body contains too much spirit energy of the world. But his meridians can't accommodate it. So, it doesn't turn into spiritual power. Moreover, he has been practicing the melting meridian's hand technique with the help of the divine kai-gathering fish. So, this phenomenon has become more and more obvious. The incomplete version of the heavy pill has not only healed his injuries, it has also impacted the effect of the melting meridian's hand. And a part of it has already been opened. It's a healing process, and not an increase in spiritual power. But how can his spiritual power not rush in after his meridians have been opened after 10 years of confinement? So, what's so surprising about such an improvement? Sword Spirit concluded with a sentence to retaliate against Chu Yang's threat. You're a typical countryman. You haven't seen much of the world. So, it's not surprising that you don't know about such things. Fuck. Chu Yang rubbed his nose. He forced a smile and endured it. He walked for 2 days. Finally, he saw an icy peak in front of him in the hazy snow and fog. That peak pierced the blue sky. Sword Spirit became excited. This is it. Chu Yang's spirit was lifted. He rushed forward. Suddenly, be careful. Sword Spirit reminded him in his mind. Then, he heard an angry roar from afar in front of him. And the entire space seemed to tremble. It's a great spirit beast, Sword Spirit said. His voice hadn't faded when he saw a red light soaring to the sky in front of him. Then, several screams came from afar. A red shadow suddenly flew out from a distant place. It's a great spirit beast, Fire Thunder Tiger. Sword Spirit warned, don't provoke it. This guy is clearly angry. Chu Yang, Meng Chao Ran, and Tan Tan greeted them. Then, the three of them found a corner to hide. They had barely hidden when they saw a huge fiery red silhouette rush out from 1,000 feet away. It was madly rushing out from a height of more than 100 feet. So bold and powerful, Meng Chao Ran praised. His voice hadn't faded when a silhouette suddenly flew up from a place not far from him. It rumbled like thunder. The man and his sword transformed into a white light, and rushed head-on towards the Fire Thunder Tiger, Emperor-level expert. The master and his disciples were shocked. They were extremely puzzled. Even an Emperor-level expert wouldn't be a match for a Fire Thunder Tiger. Why is he overconfident enough to intercept this enraged Fire Thunder Tiger? Moreover, his alone. Is he simply throwing away his life? Then, the master and disciple were shocked. This Emperor-level expert has fused his entire body's essence, energy, spirit, and even his soul into this sword. Moreover, he's using the method of burning his life. Why is he doing this? Has he been enjoying too much glory, splendor, and wealth? Why did he come to this northern wilderness to throw away his life? The two silhouettes, one big and one small, collided in midair. That Emperor-level expert screamed loudly. His body fiercely flew backwards for hundreds of feet. Then, it got torn apart, and turned into flesh and blood that filled the sky. Chu Yang stared blankly. He shivered. Crap. Did he really throw away his life? Tan Tan opened his eyes wide and sighed. This man's way of killing himself is very unique. Moreover, it's very coquettish. Meng Chao Ran shouted, shut up. I received a call in the evening. I had something to do today. So, I had to work overtime for a while. I will go and watch a concert after I finish updating. Well, a friend's daughter is holding a concert here today. So, I must go and support her. Hihi, it's said that this is the first time I've heard a concert. Chapter 535. The Fire Thunder Tiger roared furiously. A bloody wound was fiercely pierced on its body. A large amount of blood was dripping down. It roared furiously. It seemed that it was very dissatisfied that it had been injured by an ant that was far inferior to itself. It patrolled around, but didn't find anything. Then, it resentfully turned into a red light and disappeared without a trace. No one had noticed that the strange mark on Tan Tan's forehead had strangely lit up when that spirit beast had appeared. But it had dimmed down after the spirit beast had disappeared. A few figures quickly flew out from the place where that Emperor-level expert had leaped out. They collected the blood of the Fire Thunder Tiger with their fastest speed. They didn't miss a single drop. They collected 2 big bottles in total. Everyone had a kind of suppressed joy in their hearts. Chu Yang suddenly realized something. So that's how it is. Those aristocratic clans are collecting the blood essence of spirit beasts. He couldn't help but feel a little sad. These aristocratic clans want to collect the blood essence of spirit beasts. Perhaps this is the only way. An expert sacrificed himself in exchange for a wound on the body of a spirit beast. And everyone doesn't make a move. They wait until the spirit beast has left. Then they come out to collect the blood essence. They only need to sacrifice one person to get it. Immortals, how helpless can they be? A thin figure silently flew out. He took off his clothes and spread them on the snowy ground. He picked up the scattered bones and flesh of that Emperor-level expert and put them into his clothes. He silently did these things. His face was filled with suppressed sadness. Ao Xie Yun. So, it's the Ao clan's people. Chu Yang recalled that he had seen the Ao clan's people lying in ambush like this some time ago. So, the Ao clan has been planning this all along. Chu Yang suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart when he saw Ao Xie Yun silently picking up the corpse of that fallen Emperor-level expert. This Duke Xie still has a bit of conscience. It's not easy to do this even if it's pretentious. The Ao clan's people had finished collecting the scattered blood essence of spirit beasts. Then, everyone knelt on the ground under Ao Xie Yun's leadership. They silently kowtowed to the corpse that was wrapped in clothes. Then, they stood up. Return immediately. Be careful of the Black Devil, Ao Xie Yun said in a deep voice. The experts of the Ao clan agreed at the same time. They quietly left. Ao Xie Yun walked at the back. His face was cold. Tears could be seen faintly. He took a few steps and looked back, but finally, he was almost out of sight. He suddenly turned around, turned over, and knelt down. Then, he kowtowed 3 times in the direction where that Emperor-level expert had fallen. His body was bent over the ground, and he didn't make any sound. In the distance, the experts of the Ao clan were quietly waiting for their young master, and they didn't say a word. Finally, Ao Xie Yun stood up. He let out a long whistle, and left without looking back. The group of people silently disappeared in the wind and snow, and disappeared from this world. This is what an aristocratic family is like. This is the foundation of a great family. Meng Chao ran sighed. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. Then, he finally said, yes, this is an aristocratic family. This is a true aristocratic family. If an aristocratic family wants to rise, it must go through the joint efforts of several generations. Only then would it slowly form a thing called foundation. The foundation didn't necessarily depend on how many experts the clan had. Instead, it was a concept, a belief. A clan with a solid foundation would give its clansmen a sense of identity, belonging, and glory. With this feeling, they would feel that they should do anything for the clan. And they would do it willingly. Just like the Emperor-level expert of the Ao clan who had sacrificed himself today. Such a clan was worthy of being called an aristocratic family. So, a clan that had someone commit suicide can be called an aristocratic family. Tan Tan seemed to understand something as he listened. But he still didn't understand. Chu Yang and Meng Chao Ran were stunned. The 3 of them finally arrived in front of this icy peak. They looked up, and sucked in a mouthful of cold air. High. Steep. Just by looking at it, all the descriptive terms automatically popped up in everyone's mind. This entire mountain peak is like a sword. Tan Tan shook his head, and stuck out his tongue. Who can use such a big sword? Chu Yang's heart moved. He turned his head, and looked at him. The sword spirit in Chu Yang's mind space was also somewhat shocked. There should have been a fight here. Otherwise, that Fire Thunder Tiger wouldn't have run out. Why is it so quiet now? Meng Chao Ran was concerned about this matter. He had 2 younger brothers with him. So, he had no choice but to be cautious. Master Meng would get nervous if there was even the slightest movement. It didn't matter how high the cultivation of his younger brothers was. In Meng Chao Ran's heart, they would always be children who needed his protection as long as he was by their side. He had the responsibility to protect them. The fire thunder tiger ran away. So, those people naturally wouldn't stay here. Chu Yang said, Master, there aren't many people in the upper 3 heavens who can make a fire thunder tiger run away. Moreover, I know that the only people who can do this are Duke Yu and Jun Shizhu. They have already gone into closed-door training. Therefore, the people who forced the fire thunder tiger to come out must be experts of the upper 3 heavens. And, their appearance here is in violation of the rules of the heavenly layer. Therefore, they won't foolishly wait here. They won't be able to escape in time. It would have been a big deal if they had been discovered by the law enforcers of the heavenly layer. Chu Yang explained tactfully. Well, it's good that there's no ambush. Meng Chao Ran nodded. Are you sure you want to go in alone? Yang Yi pursed her lips. All right. You go. Tan Tan and I will wait for you there. Meng Chao Ran pointed at a cave not far away. All right. Tan Tan was somewhat anxious when he saw Chu Yang turn around and leave. He stuck his head out and asked, Master, why didn't you let me go with you? Why would you go with me? Meng Chao Ran looked at Chu Yang's gradually disappearing silhouette and said, Tan Tan, there's one thing you must remember. Everyone in this world has one or several secrets that they don't want others to know, and you shouldn't pry into this secret as long as this person doesn't harm you. That's because your prying will only harm others. And you'll lose even more. A person's curiosity is endless. It's just like a person's desire. Therefore, you must control it. Meng Chao Ran deeply said, we live in Jianghu. So, we must remember this point even more. An ordinary person may suffer a blow because of their curiosity. But, a person of Jianghu may lose his life because of his curiosity. Yes, Master. Tan Tan drooped his head. Meng Chao Ran nodded and smiled. Chu Yang naturally wouldn't harm Tan Tan. But, Meng Chao Ran wanted to give his disciple a precaution first. He wanted to avoid suffering a big loss because of this in the future. I can't protect them forever. So, they have to walk their own path. The closer they got to the mountain peak, the more excited the sword spirit became. It's here. It's here. The sword spirit muttered in a neurotic manner. His whole body trembled as he moved. Where do we go in? Chu Yang was also a little excited. Go forward. Turn, go down. The sword spirit instructed in his mind, go in by force from here. The sword spirit impatiently shouted when they were halfway up the mountain. Go in from here. Then, use the calamity sword to dive down. It's at the bottom of this mountain. The sword spirit became excited. Okay. Chu Yang pulled out his long sword. The calamity sword quickly attached itself to the sword under his control. Then, it plunged down. How much longer? It didn't take long for Chu Yang to go deep into the ground. He felt that the cold energy around him was getting heavier and heavier. So, he asked. He couldn't help but ask because the calamity sword was slacking off a little. The calamity sword felt that this excavation wasn't beneficial to it. So, it was somewhat dissatisfied. The efficiency was greatly reduced. It was only after Chu Yang promised countless treasures that the calamity sword could continue working. During this process, the sword spirit was a little embarrassed. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. Sigh, I've caused the sword master to be chased for debt again. We still have to go down, a few thousand feet. The sword spirit sensed for a moment and said excitedly, I can feel that the remnants of the sword spirit are also excited and looking forward to it. A few thousand feet? Chu Yang was shocked. He had already dived down nearly 10,000 feet. Yet, he still hadn't reached the bottom. Could it be that he had to dig through the ground? It's only a few thousand feet. How can it be possible to dig through the ground? The sword spirit said honestly. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and continued to do the hard work. After going down another 3,000 feet, he finally dug through the solid ice ground. Soil actually began to appear below. There's also soil in the far north wilderness. Chu Yang was surprised. Which part of this land doesn't have soil? The sword spirit said somewhat disdainfully. But when he dug here, the calamity sword also became very excited. It was completely different from the previous lackadaisical and lifeless state of idleness. It dug happily. What's wrong? Chu Yang was a little puzzled. The calamity sword's sword tip, sword edge, and sword blade danced and trembled together. They were extremely happy. The sword spirit finally raised his eyebrows and said, "They feel that there's something good. Other than this, what else can make this bunch of greedy murderers so excited? They didn't even think about it. How can a sword land in an ordinary place? They're really ignorant." Chu Yang was stunned. Looking at the reactions of the sword spirit and the calamity sword, could it be that this time, they would actually find some incredible treasure? Chu Yang's heart suddenly became very excited. To be able to make the calamity sword move like this. Could it be one of the great miraculous medicines? Thinking of this, he continued to dig without stopping. Under the crazy digging of the calamity sword, the distance of 3,000 feet was dug through in a short period of time. Below, after removing a layer of stone slab, there was actually a large and dry space. A sword light danced in this space, like a divine dragon. It was out of this world. Chu Yang entered through it. The sword light that was swimming in the space suddenly stopped. Then, it emitted a rainbow-colored light. It slowly condensed and rippled a few times. It turned into an illusory figure in a white sword robe. Its facial features slowly emerged. Chu Yang suddenly realized that it looked almost the same as the sword spirit in his mind. At this moment, this figure was examining Chu Yang with sword-like eyes. Then, it asked, "This is the calamity sword master of this life?" Chapter 536. Yes. A voice came from Chu Yang's body. It was the sword spirit's voice. It sounded a little surprised. "This is the calamity sword master of this generation. You are just a remnant soul. How can you have your own consciousness? Too weak." The remnant soul looked at Chu Yang disdainfully. It ignored the sword spirit's question. How could it look down on the original body? The sword spirit was silent. Apparently, he felt that something was wrong. Chu Yang could feel the anger on the sword spirit's face. It seemed that the sword spirit was extremely angry. Which generation's calamity sword master is this? The sword spirit asked arrogantly. Its attitude was very arrogant. Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit with interest. He felt that this guy had quite a character. The sword spirit said coldly, "Don't you know how many years you have been here?" The sword spirit sneered, "I followed the first calamity sword master. But I didn't follow the second one. I followed the third one. I didn't follow the fourth one. I followed the fifth one. But after the fifth one, I was here. Who the fuck knows which generation this is? This is the first calamity sword master." The sword spirit said deeply, "It is also our chance." "What chance?" The sword spirit sneered, "I felt that the original body was here. I was still very excited. But this calamity sword master is so weak. I am really disappointed." "Don't be presumptuous," the sword spirit shouted. "If you don't return to your position, what are you waiting for?" "Return to my position?" The sword spirit hesitated and sighed, "Let me stay here. I really can't see any hope if I go out with him." Chu Yang's body shook fiercely. The sword spirit had escaped from this space. A black shadow flashed out from the surface of Chu Yang's body, and grabbed the sword spirit. "Come here." The illusory shadow flashed and turned into a sword light again. The sword spirit said, "Don't force me." The sword spirit was furious and said, "You are a remnant soul of mine. Why do you want to fight with the original body now? I also want to roam the world with you, but this calamity sword master is too weak. I also want to roam the world with you, but this calamity sword master is too weak. I want to be with you too." The incomplete sword soul recited in a poetic manner. Then, it said solemnly, "Therefore, I think that it would be better for you to stay here. You and I can become one. With me as the master, We can dominate the heavens. You still want to be independent. You want to lure me here and devour me. You're still thinking about the sword spirit of the great success stage. The sword spirit was unable to restrain his anger, and pounced over. With a shake of his body in midair, he transformed into a hazy sword gleam. The two sword lights clashed fiercely. Chu Yang sighed. He felt speechless. After going through so much trouble to come down here, he actually caused such a thing. It turned out that this guy wanted to devour the sword spirit instead. With a chong sound, the sword tip of the tribulation sword appeared in his dantian, flickering with light. The sword's edge suddenly rose and appeared on Chu Yang's forehead. It was glistening with light. The sword blade flew up and stuck to Chu Yang's chest. A ferocious and majestic force surged out. The upper and lower parts of the sword seemed to form a line. A monstrous murderous aura swarmed out, and protected Chu Yang's entire body. The two sword lights chased each other in that space. It couldn't be seen clearly which one had the upper hand. Rays of light flashed chaotically in the entire space. It seemed as if countless stars had suddenly gathered in this narrow space, and were flickering crazily. With a loud clang sound, the black sword spirit drifted backwards. That white sword light staggered and tumbled backwards. It seemed that the sword spirit's main body was more skillful after all. That white sword light staggered backwards. The sword light had somewhat dimmed. Suddenly, he flipped over, and darted into a corner of this space like a bolt of lightning. Unexpectedly, there was a kai sound, and water splashed out. Then, the white sword light rushed out and laughed. Main body, you should obey me. You can't defeat me here. The sword spirit's eyes widened. He said in shock, soul-quenching spring? No wonder you deliberately lured me here. It turns out that there's a soul-quenching spring here. He gnashed his teeth as he spoke the last few words. I can recover immediately every time I get injured with the soul-quenching spring here. But you can't. The incomplete sword spirit proudly smiled, and, this spring is behind me. I've placed a restriction on it. So, you don't have a chance to touch it. And, nothing can touch this soul-quenching spring except for the soul. The incomplete sword spirit suddenly issued a cruel sword cry and said, You're consuming your energy at all times. And, I can always maintain my peak condition. So, what can you do even if you're stronger than me? Do you have any chance of winning? The sword light transformed by the sword spirit scattered. It had obviously hit a sore spot. Chu Yang's mind moved. He thought, what is this soul-quenching spring? Can it quench the soul? The sword point stealthily throbbed in his dantian, and signaled him to come over. Chu Yang forced a smile. This soul-quenching spring has clearly stated that nothing can touch it except for the soul. So, what's the use of going over there? The sword point continued to urge him. It was throbbing more and more intensely. Chu Yang sighed. He thought, I'll go over and take a look. There's nothing I can do about it. He moved his feet, and walked over there. The incomplete sword spirit saw that Chu Yang was walking toward the soul-quenching spring. Suddenly, it emitted a fierce aura and said, Let me destroy this body first. There's no harm in that. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shot over. Chu Yang suddenly felt cold all over. A cold aura of death suddenly shrouded his heart. Under the attack of this incomplete sword spirit, Chu Yang couldn't even move a finger. However, the tribulation sword seemed to have expected this. So, it jumped out of his dantian in advance. The sword point of the tribulation sword let out a long cry, and suddenly jumped up. The sword edge suddenly followed, and the sword edge stretched across the air. The three sections of the sword flashed in the air. A fierce aura of eternity rippled out. It turned into a black gas, and greeted the wisp of sword spirit. The incomplete sword spirit retreated. It seemed to have some misgivings. It snorted, I didn't expect this guy to have refined 3 sections. Well, I won't touch him with your protection. Humph, even if he gets there, can he touch the soul-quenching spring in his human form? He won't even see it. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, it changed its tone and said, but this little one is a little interesting. He can make the tribulation sword so obedient. Ha ha, this is something that hasn't happened in 10,000 years. How about this, little one? Although you are very weak, if you let me devour that guy, and then I will enter your tribulation space, I will help you to dominate the heavens and break through the cage of the heaven. How about it? It laughed strangely and said, you should know that what I said is something that this good-for-nothing on your body can't do. It doesn't dare to do it. Chu Yang straightened his body. His eyes were like lightning. He said indifferently, weak or strong, I am the sword master, and you are just a sword spirit, and an incomplete one at that. Weak or strong, a sword spirit like you who doesn't listen to orders and wants to rebel, no matter how strong you are, I will only refuse, and kill you. You don't deserve to follow me. The incomplete sword spirit screamed fiercely in the air. It shouted furiously, I don't deserve to. I don't deserve to. Suddenly, it turned into a sword light and rushed over crazily, I will kill you first. You puny teacher. The sword spirit let out a sword cry and rushed over. It caught up with the incomplete sword spirit at the speed of light and blocked it in midair. The two sword lights tangled together again. This time, the battle was even more intense. Chu Yang shook his head gently and said indifferently, you don't deserve to be my sword spirit. No matter how strong you are, you still don't deserve to be my sword spirit. How can I allow you to control my path? He snorted and said silently in his heart, even if you are a god, you still can't. Immediately after, he no longer paid any attention to the incomplete sword soul and quickly rushed to the corner. To his surprise, he discovered that in the corner, there was a small and hazy spring. It was only the size of a fist and water was gurgling out from it. This water, it was a bit of a stretch to say that it was water. Because the water that came out of it was like smoke. It could be blown away with a breath. But it was indeed water. What is this? Can this be considered water? Chu Yang touched his chin and looked at the small spring in front of him. He thought, how can I prevent the sword spirit from quenching his sword spirit again? Also, didn't the incomplete sword spirit say that I shouldn't be able to see it? Why can I see it so clearly? The sword spirit was fighting. When he saw that Chu Yang had reached the soul-quenching spring under the sword spirit's carelessness, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He shouted, use your palm to block the spring and then put it into the tribulation space. Block the spring? Ha ha ha. The incomplete sword spirit laughed. Do you think he is a soul? Dream on. The sword spirit sneered and looked at him with pitiful and hateful eyes. He laughed and said, I forgot to tell you. This tribulation sword master is a person who has been reborn. He has lived 2 lives. In other words, his soul is the superposition of the souls of 2 lives. The soul of his previous life has returned to the age of 17 with his memories. He has not been reincarnated. With a clang, the incomplete sword spirit staggered back and said in shock, a tribulation sword master who has been reborn? Yes. The sword spirit didn't relax and pressed forward. His attacks became sharper and sharper. He sneered, in other words, he can use the soul-quenching spring if we can. Not only can he see it, but he can also touch it. The incomplete sword spirit screamed and said in a daze, how can this be? How can this be? Suddenly, the sword light flashed and the illusory figure was restored. He pointed at the sword spirit and shouted angrily, you, why didn't you say so earlier? Say so earlier. If I had said so earlier, you wouldn't have shown your wild ambition, the sword spirit said coldly. At this time, Chu Yang had already covered the soul-quenching spring with his right palm. He said in his heart, withdraw. Suddenly, he felt a wave of exhaustion in his divine soul. This kind of exhaustion was as if he had walked thousands of miles without eating or drinking. Even his mind was a little fuzzy at this moment. However, in the tribulation space, there was a spring next to the vitality spring. The spring water was like smoke, curling up and covering the spring. It didn't disperse for a long time. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.